programming. I saw in the that I didn't see it last week, but I saw in the replay that someone had mentioned NLP. And yeah, I think that they use methods of what amounts to the Germans called it worldview warfare, and I think that's the best way to view it. Ways of putting people in double binds ideologically, so the only choices that they have out of what they present, no matter how bad the choice is the only one that seems good. And in that, it's like, say, in the case of the evangelicals and Trump, you know, there's a saying I've heard before. He's a son of a bitch, yeah, but he's our son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You know?
I've heard that, yeah.
And that's the mindset. It's like, well, you know, look, if you have an army, right? Do you want an army of pacifists and nice people? And we explored that as well. That's something that I think we'll get to eventually with the 1st Earth Battalion. And that's sort of, I think, what started happening in the late 70s through the 80s with the rise of the New Age movement, really. And yeah, I think that all around, on both sides, like not just the Trump people, on both sides, they have ways of controlling the opposition if either side gets too strong for too long.
Yeah. Welcome to the talk show, guys. We're running late today. We're live now, guys, by the way, in the Discord. That's Oh, I got Lux running now. She's like, "What's happening?" You live? I don't know. Somewhere.
But no, going back to what you were saying, like, is it tied to that? Yeah, I think it is. I think that there's probably dozens of programs being operated by dozens of agencies that sometimes communicate and sometimes don't, and that they often even investigate each other. Like, because going back, if you listen in the history of LSD episode that we did, the FBI was trying to figure out what the hell the CIA was doing. They weren't read in on that operation.
Oh.
You know, so like when Operation Midnight Climax is happening, they managed to get a hold of some of the drugs, and they're trying to figure out what the drugs are.
Okay.
You got me? That's how little they knew about what the CIA was doing. It was so heavily compartmentalized. And then you get into groups like the DIA. Like, just because Reagan in '81 said the CIA can't operate within the U.S. anymore, doesn't mean that the Defense Intelligence Agency can't. So everything that was CIA that's problematic operating here, just roll it over to the DIA. Done. No problem. Reagan satisfied. On paper.
Damn.
So no, I don't think any of these programs ever stopped. I think sometimes they roll over into intelligence agencies. I think sometimes they just got rolled over into private companies formed by people who used to work for the government.
I was about to say, I think because of the way that some of the old government types retire into a corporation, I think that it's been, to a certain level, like corporations are controlling like Gaia.
Well, I've been putting together.
It's owned by Procter and Gamble, and Gaia is controlling the spirit science people now.
Yes, so that's an exact example, I think. Of more of what I would say would be a left-wing aimed version of it.
Yeah, like Procter and Gamble has weird.
I find it weird that, you know, the New Age community, allegedly liberal community, is also so heavily based off of Nazi information. It blows my mind.
Well, that's because, look, man, when you look at, say, the history of World War I, the shock troops in World War I that they used were generally bohemians. Like, these were long-haired poets who had ideologically decided they were going to go murder and kill for the state of Germany and what it represented to them.
Yeah.
Like, understand that. People in America especially have this hard association that that any good artist is on the left, and if they're not on the left, also their art sucks. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've known too many people that does not apply to. We put people in these hard boxes of how we define what we should expect of them on their politics. Well, for people who don't think that way, that's just an easy way to hide agents, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Skunk Baxter.
I've noticed, like, spirit science as an example, where they immediately make Hebrew people the other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned all the Nazism involved. Once we get up to Once we get to World War II, keep in mind all of those groups started out of occult groups, right? That was the big background network that led to the rise of National Socialism. Things like the Tula Society.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The Tula Society.
I love
That dude was nuts. Can you believe that dude literally gave Hitler a messiah complex?
Yeah.
Like spoon-fed him a messiah complex. Like, no joke.
Not only do I believe it, I think that that's an example of them programming an agent. Like, nobody talks about Martin Bormann or the fact that he almost certainly escaped, even though we say he's dead. There's a ton of evidence.
Bormann is like, and not to like prop the dude up, but he was like one of the smartest Nazis I've ever read about.
Oh, yeah. Look, guy,
dude showed up like 10 years late to the party and then still like owned access to Hitler.
Yep, 100%. Like between Bormann, Skorzeny, and Klaus Barbie, like I believe we know Skorzeny survived, we know Barbie survived, we know Mengele survived.
Yep.
Right, and there's evidence. In Brazil, I can't remember where. I want to say the Bank of Rio de Janeiro. Bormann passed a check on his own signature in the 60s. Whoa. Through Deutsche Bank. Right? So,
and I mean, the official story is what? He got lost in the wood and killed by Allied soldiers?
There's five official stories.
Whoa.
There are 5 different stories given by people who claim to witness his death, which is exactly how you create an atmosphere of disinformation so that they've got 5 different avenues they have to search down. Yeah. You know, I don't think Hitler died either. I think that they got him to
Argentina?
Yeah, to Argentina.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way, dude. I mean, the only reason, dude, like, and I don't know. It's hard to say, dude. The dude was super delusional, but like, that's beyond delusional. Like, to sit there in the burning inferno of like your home and just accept death is like beyond delusional.
No,
I can't see a way they didn't like burn a corpse and get him the fuck out of there.
No, well, I'm certain that's what happened. I am certain that's what happened.
He was like Nero playing his lute on the way to Argentina.
Well, and you know, there's a story that ties back to what we're going to talk about today, which is that. That functionally, after he got out, we know that the Nazis were working with us from that point forward. Yeah. Right? That's like, well, I can demonstrate that all day long.
You can see it in our technology.
Now, the thing we don't talk about is Japan. Oh. Japan raided mainland China, hoovering up wealth, right? And I have a suspicion that, and this is going to sound insane, that the amount of wealth that they hoovered up and then they hid, right, was part of the Nazi loot. And guys, I think it was so much money at that point in the 40s that not even adjusted for inflation, it's more money currently in circulation than is above board on books on Earth. Wow. Something to the tune of $450 trillion.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, you get 7-8 years, like, I mean, not even that. You want to take 15 years of just total, complete pillage.
Yeah. And
one of the richest known countries in Earth's history.
So you take that, right, and you hide it down in South America. Mm-hmm. But you got to launder it. It's like anything else. You can't just have this stuff show up.
Also, where a lot of Japanese war veterans went after they got home from their islands or wherever they were when they survived. There was World War. They went to South America too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got all this. You've got a potential for this huge amount of loot. One of the stories we're going to talk about today on the Tattered Map is tied to us potentially wanting to kill the head of or the president of Nicaragua in the 60s. Because he was dipping too heavily into off-books money for his own self-aggrandizement.
Oh. Okay.
Right? Yeah. And one of the guys we're going to talk about today, who may have been an assassin, though didn't actually fire any shots at the Kennedy assassination, but set up on the route to shoot at him, may have been the guy they were setting up to kill. And the Nicaraguans did such an astounding amount of what they called hypnotic grilling, and this guy admitted this stuff. Like, he said, "Oh, this is what's going on," But what they found was a guy who had 4 different levels and personalities of hypnotic induction.
Whoa.
Yeah, one associated with Strategic Air Command and MAC-VSOG in Vietnam. Yeah, no, it's a wild story. I'm gonna read out a whole chapter from a book called Operation Mind Control on the guy. And Jay and I are gonna intermittently comment on it and tie back what we're talking about to some of the things that we've been talking about in the other shows.
Followed the Rittenhouse jury bus to try to get photos of the jurors. No, I didn't see that, Erica. The media tried to get photos of the jurors. Of course they fucking did. Dirty, dude.
MSNBC's been barred from the rest of the case.
Fucking word. That's why.
They're not, like, I don't know what they're doing, dude.
Dude, what was I talking about earlier? You're seeing a realignment. They pushed extremism for a while.
Oh, and real quick to answer Michelle. Oh my
sorry.
gosh, sorry. We have a new baby in the Murkies family.
Oh, yay!
And Michelle said that she's really proud of her baby girl. Yeah, how's Rose doing? Oh, you're proud of your daddy today? Oh. Hey, I bet he's a happy grandpa today. Dang straight, Michelle. Anyway, sorry.
No,
hey, we
that's
got
awesome.
Jameson in the house. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, what I was saying, going back to earlier, is we pushed extremism for basically the last 12 years, right? To the view of one half or another of America.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be your half.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the half you probably identify with, whichever it is. I'm not putting that on anybody.
Yeah.
But we all know that basically it's split half and half. All known poll numbers indicate that, you know? So my premise is that they've pushed what amounts to extremism on both sides for the last 12 years.
Yes.
Boiled it over.
Yeah.
As Jay often says, round up the extremists.
Yeah. They're bad for a democracy.
And now you have the most incompetent administration I think any of us living have seen in our lives. To be honest, like they seem astoundingly incompetent. When I think of Kamala Harris, I think someone asks her a question, she starts laughing as she just sort of walks to a door and walks out of it. That's her response to every question, you know?
I can't get over Joe Biden saying, just things that imply he's just on the ride.
Well, he tries to like angrily daddy talk the nation, and that doesn't work. That upsets as many. It's not your job to be our dad and try and be authoritarian with us, convince us.
Yes.
When you're doing that, you're trying to demand respect instead of commanding respect, and that's never functional for a leader. So I think we're in a place now where we're about to see a big switch up.
Well, we had the previous administration,
and it's part of the management strategy.
Well, I think, I don't know, it felt like after Obama there's an 8-year fucking plan, and I don't think they planned on having Trump for 8. I think they had planned him exacerbating the extremists on one side, and now we've got Biden exacerbating the extremists on the other side.
Yeah, no, that's how it seems to me.
And we gotta wait a whole other fucking administration before we get some competency.
Who's the 8-year king that's coming in?
Yes,
after this, dude. Yeah, that's the real question. Who's the savior?
Well, if anybody's been keeping up,
someone younger,
not getting too much into American politics, but one thing that you're seeing over the course of the last decade is a big change in one party, which is the Republicans. The Democrats push back against all the new and young people in their parties. So, whether you like the Squad or not, half of the Democratic Party does not like the Squad, and it's created a Democratic civil war. Meanwhile, what's her name just got kicked out of the party?
Yeah.
Of the Republicans?
Yeah.
Older people who aren't in line with what younger Republicans want are getting kicked out. Now, in the last 2 weeks, what I've seen nationwide are the Republicans float a bill for UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Yep.
Float a bill for a public option for the health care. Yeah. You're seeing a realignment amongst young parties, and the parties are sort of half swapping their platforms again.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to bring back trust busting. Specifically, they're we're going to be like Teddy Roosevelt and break up all these tech companies that are driving us all crazy. That's a message a lot of people are wanting to hear. They're even having functionally bodily autonomy by saying it's my body, my choice on the vaccine. While they still almost certainly are going to not support abortion because they view it as murder,
Texas won't ever.
But in general, the concept now of well, it's my body is in there with their population, and at some point you will probably, I believe, see them normalize toward that, because that's really the only issue at this point. Younger people want access to guns, they want access to healthcare, they want a social safety net, they want everything the Republicans are offering plus abortion. Meanwhile, the Democrats right now are fighting all of the progressive elements. So you're seeing a lack of faith in the Democratic Party, and young people who don't have a ton of personal investment in politics per se, right? They just because they don't have a decade of being political.
I mean,
are picking and choosing. It's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw that particular youthful crowd split in half this last 4 years.
They're still split in half.
So,
but what I'm saying is your generation, the millennials, they're 75% to the left, right?
Which
Your
is-
generation
yeah.
75% to the left.
Yeah.
The Zoomers 50-50.
Yeah.
And I think even that is important to note,
Well,
that even though there was this swing,
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
generational.
Is like out of that, like let's say 10 million people pool, 5 million now are not watching Joe Rogan anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Well,
It's-
but
it-
the other thing
yeah.
is that the young people seem to be, while split on those lines,
Yeah.
more likely to want to work together as opposed to just fight each other.
Yeah.
Not the narrative the media is presenting you, but definitely the narrative that is apparent to me whenever I deal with any people younger than me.
because that's been something I've encountered on this show is just the difference in particularly the demographic younger than mine, like the generation after, like younger than me, right? They're one of fucking two ways. I mean, they are either zealously, against firearms and for reform, or they're, want it, or they think, or they're like, bitch, you're talking to anti-gun, fuck you,
No.
or people who are like, oh, you sound pro-gun, fuck you.
But here's the
Both
difference,
from the
right?
youth,
Only one of these parties is allowing the youth real meaningful access to the process. The other's fighting them.
That's
And that's why I think you're seeing such a big change, is because there's not a deadlock in accomplishing the goals on the Republican side, but there is on the Democrat side. They can't accomplish their own goals because they're fighting over what they should be. The Republicans, as usual, are like, well, what did the party say? What did the voters in our party say? Fucking just do that.
yeah, I don't know. I'm still not necessarily seeing that out of the youth yet.
I would say let's wait and see on
Yeah,
that one, but
I got
that's
mine.
where my analysis sits today, and I'm totally willing to adjust
Yeah.
that.
That's a solid prediction.
I
think,
would
but
ask
I'm not
y'all
seeing
to at
that.
least keep it in mind.
Yeah, because I still see just as many, on both. I don't know. I'm just not seeing mass turn here.
I think
like
a
that.
generational increase of 25% or decrease of 25% is astoundingly significant number.
Well, if we're not
That
talking
would
about,
crash empires.
yeah, but we're not talking about the millennials. I'm talking younger.
Well, yeah, no, well, that's what I'm saying. They're 50-50. The millennials were 75, but over time, you're going to see a change from where we've been over the last 15 years when the millennials went from the beginning of voting age to basically being 40-year-olds on the top end. They've had that now with their structures and their expectation that the next generation, as usual, is going to follow those trends, but not. They're in the middle of a civil war.
There's just anthropological things that speak to me as to why millennials in general are typically Democrat leaning, and that's just what our generation went through. It's,
Right.
It's indicative of like the previous generations that kind of statistically skewed Democrat.
Yeah.
You have a catastrophe where a Republican is in charge, followed by a long-term Democrat president
Right.
who you grew up with.
This will be the first time that anyone who's not 50 or older has seen a Democrat in charge fuck up this spectacularly.
Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons you might see a reversal of that trend.
Yeah, so you're saying you predict again things might go kind of like when Jimmy Carter happened.
Yeah.
When he had his 4
Absolutely.
years.
I think it's going to be like the malaise again,
Yeah.
and you're probably going to deal with 8 years of Reagan. And I think that it's going to start off with a bunch of people who have relatively reasonable good ideas, like happens on both sides of politics all the time.
Yeah.
And if they get power,
I like that
to consider to keep getting elected because of how our system is based on elections every damn 2 years.
Yeah.
That they're going to skew more extreme as their policies fail, and the people on the other side have some reasonable ideas for solutions.
Yeah,
and this is part of that big management strategy of just oscillating us back and forth.
Yeah, because I don't think we get to Reagan without, Carter.
Well, yeah, we don't.
We might be in Carter part.
Well, and you've got to understand, when Carter happens, they expected Carter to fucking fix everything because, like, the Church Committee had just happened in '75, where it was like the CIA's trying to fucking lobotomize Compton.
Yep.
Well, we're in a real similar place now.
Well, and Carter, the big noteworthy thing about his administration was his vice president's Quaalude scandal. This is a Democratic situation. Again, like the one thing his administration could have accomplished, they waited specifically to give to Reagan's.
Yep.
Which was the negotiation of what the Israeli hostages, was it? Iranian hostages. So,
Well, there's conspiracies about that they didn't
I totally
wait.
see what you're saying with
the other big with the Quaalude scandal. Well, guys, you've heard me talking about the BNDD and then the DEA. They're the most corrupt. If anybody's going to set up a politician with a fistful of Quaaludes,
yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that's what happened. Not at all.
But, I mean...
But considering the actors we know in play and how they were acting at that time, that's well within possibility.
We're talking the people who didn't get busted for Watergate are still working for that party.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, Roger Stone's still out there Roger Stoning.
Yeah, he's Stone Cold Roger, dude.
Stone Cold Roger.
He's just being fucking cracking cold ones with his Nixon back tattoo. Fucking weird. But that's...
Well, because Nixon was trying to set himself up to be a king.
Okay, so like where you and Chief are going with that, who's going to be our next big 8-year fucking daddy? Chief, you say something kind of like Reagan will probably see something from the right show up for 8 years?
I think you're going to...
I don't know, man. I was going to say, I don't know. Because everything gets turned on its head every few months.
Here's my prediction, because this is all, to me, a PR game.
Yeah.
Right? That's how they run it. And they're going to pick somebody that the Democrats are not going to be able to argue against traditionally. Gotcha. And it's going to be a young person. Like,
see, I was thinking that too.
Dude, if
I was hoping that it would be just someone younger, someone youthful, somebody who, hey, I wouldn't mind 8 years of a UBI.
Oh yeah, well no, I figure you will probably they will probably do like that. Like, do you remember Michael Steele?
Yeah.
Michael Steele, who was the head of the RNC?
Yeah.
And obviously just a giant muppet.
We got the youngest Bush. The fluent in Spanish one.
I don't know.
The fluent in Spanish one.
They won't use him.
It needs to be... They need to find some. It's almost somebody that they need to start manufacturing.
They're going to try and run somebody like a young Colin Powell or Condi Rice.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Only other thing I could see is if Tulsi Gabbard swaps parties, which might happen.
Ooh, especially if they're touting things like UBI.
Damn, dude.
That's true, because Tulsi is kind of more on the libertarian side of fucking left.
Yeah, you could see Tulsi leave and join Yang's party since he started this new party.
I like
that.
And
I don't know, we might see something happen out of that party. Like, I was a Yang guy. I'm not normally the type of person who goes after a politician, but I will strategically support somebody that I think has good immediate policies that will help people.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt about Yang. There's plenty of things that were like, Yang and I do not see eye to eye on guns. Yang lives in New York. Yeah, dude. Yeah. If I grew up and lived in New York, I'd be worried about stray fire. And I grew up in a place where I was worried about stray fire, but I'm not, it's not dense.
Yeah, it's not New York.
This goes back to what I was saying yesterday, like rubber bullets.
Yeah.
And that goes back to our ridiculous gun laws. I'm not allowed to shoot a person in any situation with any bullet unless deadly force is applicable. You got me? Right? I don't think that's right. I think that, honestly, a 5-foot, 100-pound woman should be able to carry a revolver with low powder charge and rubber bullets, like is legal in some European countries, like Russia, where anyone over 18 can carry a rubber bullet gun.
Yeah.
And it has enough force to kill within 6 feet, break your jaw at 25 feet.
Hey, in Queens or where we're from in Arkansas, if you get them below the waist, you can skate away from a manslaughter charge.
No, yeah, you can say that you were trying not to, but look, guys, that like instead of trying to circumvent what's there, dude, I would say why can't you get something like a low power 38
bullets.
super short loaded with
bullets.
rubber bullets that lose their effectivity after about 25 yards, will break a jaw at 25 feet, and will kill a man at 6 feet. Like that seems like an excellent carry weapon for America. But we also have to change when you can use it from just being lethal, because we have to recognize that a 6'5", 300-pound person is almost certainly going to win in a physical standoff against a 5', 100-pound person. And considering that, it should be understandable if that person pulls out a rubber bullet gun and lights them up.
Is that a gun person nightmare, I wonder, where the person you're shooting just Luke Cages at you, crumples your gun, and just whoops your ass?
Oh, dude, what sort of dreams do you think I have?
Oh, worse.
Yeah, dude, that's like terrifying.
Fucking, yeah, so I could see, but
like, and that sounds crazy to people, but guys, here's the thing. I think of it as a de-escalation strategy that still involves violence. Yeah. Like, it's not as deadly. It's a context where we're still acting like the stupid Americans we are because we haven't learned to use our fucking words. Yeah. But there's not as much collateral damage, to put a really sanitized term on it.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think it's a bad strategy. I think it's something that we should at least entertain.
Yeah.
And that, you know. Oh.
There we go. I think I'm back.
We cool? I'm back. You back?
I think so. Yes. Yep. There it is.
Okay.
No, it's about my headphones went a little wonky.
No, you know, you talk about gun solutions and improved technology. Shit, there's technology we're just not legally allowed to use. Yeah. And we could find some way to mark those guns. You know, school buses are a special color you're not supposed to be able to buy or use. We could find one to make all these guns have to be. And it's like, oh, well, if you've got a rubber bullet gun, it's got to be this particular color and pattern of coating on it, which is easy and cheap to do. It's not an unreasonable thing to put on the manufacturers.
Yep.
And that's the only thing that color and significance and pattern is allowed to be used for, because it's such an important thing, so that we can recognize that those are rubber bullet guns. And the other thing is, if you modify a rubber bullet gun to take live, like, will kill you, like lead, copper, metallic cartridges, right? Then that's a big fucking jail sentence, buddy.
This is a little off topic, but I love it when films, like sci-fi films, like Aliens, with the fucking the loader. Right?
Oh yeah,
I like how they went with like Tonka yellow,
right?
Like, because it looks like industrial equipment.
That's good. That's a good aesthetic choice.
Yeah,
right?
Like if that thing would have been just like stainless steel or some shit, like it'd be like, eh.
Well, no, but like they made a point to make the future look like today. Yeah. Like that's why those movies work in the same way that that Star Wars worked. Yeah. Like that shit was dirty and looked like it was used. It did not look like it just came off the sci-fi assembly line.
Used future.
You know, like keep in mind the first Alien takes place on a giant space truck.
That's
like they're space truckers, space trucking.
Yeah.
Space trucking.
Space trucking. Wayland, Utah, yeah. They had commercials.
I just think heavy metal, dude, and all that fucking blow.
Yeah,
it was legit, dude.
I almost got to go see that on the big screen the other night, but I was too tired because I am an old man.
Hey,
if they bring it back, I will.
I've seen that movie one time when I was 15 years old on Adult Swim late night television shit.
That's it?
But it was like unedited. Yeah, I've only seen it once, but like I remember at least 90% of what I saw.
I'm gonna find a place to file dump that for you.
Do it. I'll watch it. Yeah. I'll watch it 5 more times. Dude, I'm just lazy.
Answer Michelle.
I was scared when I told. No, I'm not mad at anyone of any religion.
No,
you got me.
At all. Hey, and I am proud that your dad's taking his health more seriously, Michelle. It's a big deal. Like, and being a grandfather changes you. It does, and I'm glad that he takes it seriously.
Well, I want to add an addendum to it. You know what I said could be taken as as almost like negging. Like, oh yeah, it's okay for you to believe that. No, really, like. Exploration of belief, to my mind, is a human right. This is one reason I'm so tolerant of people with bad beliefs, because I've known incredibly intelligent people who went through a bad belief phase that informed them in such a way that allowed them to be very good people later. Yeah. And so when you see my
It's kind of
me
like any
giving my
other-
perspective.
Yeah.
That's often like I'm defending somebody bad.
Yeah.
Like I'm just exploring. I'll put myself in their shoes. Like, okay, I'm obviously not going to do the thing. If I can imagine a way that I would be enticed into doing the thing that they did somehow, then I've got even more empathy for them because I'm a broken human being like everyone.
There's no experience that takes away someone's potential to be good company. In my experience,
that's been my experience as well. There's nothing like as long as you're not trying to harm me, and you're coming to me honestly and openly, or hell, you can even have things about me you despise, but you still like me.
Nope, I got one. If you don't eat if you don't eat chicken wings on the fucking bone, I don't fuck with you.
Like, you can eat them without the bone, but if you refuse to eat them on the bone,
you're a pussy.
Meat grows on bones,
and it's delicious.
Yeah. There is nothing wrong with some bones, dude.
But like, if you out there eating chicken,
do you know what the biggest immediate indicator of a person's political stance is?
What?
It's not uniform, right? This is like some cold reading shit.
Yeah.
It's how picky of an eater they are, because it implies whether or not they're neophobic or neophilic at the most gustatory level. Like, we developed the ability and sensorum around eating before we developed eyes or a brain, guy. So if you're the type of person who naturally is like,
picky eaters are inclined to prejudice.
Well,
and
exactly.
bias.
As opposed to being open to trying new things. Now, picky eaters don't get killed by poisonous mushrooms, so there's a reason that this has happened. This is why, I understand now as an older person why both political viewpoints are something that will be with us forever.
Yeah.
Neither side will ever win.
To reference Dune, they both have their own missionara protectiva.
Basically, yeah.
Like with these stay behind groups and repugnant ideology, and they're not going away. They've embedded it into our fucking epigenetic memory at this point. Like, we will always try to form our own means of control in a particular way, and they know how we do it.
Yeah.
And they've pushed it further.
And that's why I really feel like politics is super strategically controlled. It is in general a relatively accurate indicator of how most people feel. That's not a hard sentence. That's not that's a real squishy sentence, but that's the best way I could put it. But I also believe that they feel the people within the, I don't know, technocratic security state, whatever you want to call it, that if the people are going to make a bad idea that would cause them to no longer be a people anymore, that they'll just go ahead and fix a few key elections or whatever, or ruin a few people's fucking lives if that's what's necessary.
One thing I've thought about while playing sci-fi games and things like that, watching Dune, is what if we manage to pull off our one world democracy, right? And then we get to space. But here's the thing, all of the resources to fund the people born and living in space comes from Earth. We don't allow them voting rights initially. How long until there's a schism between space people and terrestrial?
How long until Mobile Suit Gundam? Is that what you're saying?
You guys want to hear how this ties back to the Tattered Path through Ronald Hadley Stark? That story's called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress."
Yeah.
And Ronald Hadley Stark always carried a copy of that book with him. He was the guy who took over the CIA the CIA distribution of LSD like Orange Sunshine starting from 68 to 74. Right? He's a super spy.
Yeah.
He's the guy who I have a picture of that I always use in Discord. That's Ronald Hadley Stark. That book tells you how to set up. It is secret instructions for setting up a guerrilla movement. It teaches you how to have secure communications. And we're talking about like the concepts behind it, not the technology.
Yeah.
Like the methodology.
Yeah.
It teaches you how to set up cell-based organizational structures that can't be backtracked. It's everything a person needs off a bookshelf in any country to understand through a fictional narrative how to set up a guerrilla organization.
Ooh. Hey, we need that. We need that right on the shelf next to Hypnotize the Pigs.
Yeah, right.
Like I got book ideas for special guest. But
there was one of the episodes of one of the Adam Curtis documentaries. I don't believe I linked to some Adam Curtis documentaries in the Discord, in the Inform channel. Check it out. But one of them, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. You know how it goes.
Hey, let's. If you got one, smoke.
Oh, there's an episode called "There's a policeman inside of all of our heads and he must be killed."
That one, yes. It's that. Oh, Adam Curtis is great.
Adam Curtis will blow your mind.
Yeah, Adam Curtis.
Like, look, you're gonna need some comfort food.
Yeah, get some ice cream and a blankie and Adam Curtis. That shit. You're gonna need a good 8 hours. I think it's like 4 to 6 for a whole one of Adam Curtis's programs, but you're gonna need that cool down time.
Yeah, it depends. like most of his documentaries are gonna be a documentary series. It'll be like 45-minute episodes, and they'll be between 3 to 6 episodes. He's been making them since the 80s, but start with Century of the Self, and then just I'd say maybe The Trap. Yeah. And then after that, go look on his wiki and see which ones look interesting to you, because there's going to be some. One of my favorites is called the Mayfair set.
The Mayfair set's great.
It really, really teaches how arms industries, arms smuggling, and asset stripping as a corporate concept to get money back into England in the 70s.
All were tied together by Loving Machines of Grace.
Yes.
On there for me.
I think everyone should watch that one too. And I'm saying everyone should watch hours of this shit. Guys, you don't get this. This guy is such a good filmmaker that everything he does is so gripping that you won't realize how fast time is passing. The first 10 minutes of the first episode of Century of the Self.
Yeah, I just finished that one.
Yeah, dude. That really hooked me, and it's had its hooks in me since then.
And it's one of those where he's citing his sources as he's making the film, because he's using archival BBC News footage.
Yeah.
So it's like, but done in this very, like, and then he's got interviews.
Well, by the time you're done with that, you've taken it from him in the 20s to how they used his techniques to get Clinton elected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if anyone wants to really understand how American politics work, that's a good overview of the basics of the control structure. Well, I was going to say Happiness Machine.
Oh, Happiness
And
Machine,
then All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace is a good overview of what society wants. It is trying to push us toward.
Well, how us in the West particularly fuck other markets.
Yeah. Oh, yesterday I got a hold of what is colloquially called the most banned video on YouTube. It's an episode of the BBC show Horizon from 2006, and it's got the last footage of Jose Delgado.
Oh,
he's like 90-something.
Whoa!
And so I got that so I can clip it and affect it and hopefully put it on Rex 84, and not the whole thing, but the pertinent bits, and reverse them, run them through a filter, and pray that they don't pull my channel immediately.
It's gonna sound like he's using the voice, but it'll be dope.
But yeah, or I mean, worst case scenario, I pull the audio and use a series of photos from the video.
Well, you can have it up to there until the channel until you're in the partner program. Once you're in the partner program, they'll probably tell you to pull it down, because you get away with less shit the higher up you get.
Yeah, no, I figured I could just do a second edit of the video that has that content somehow referenced but removed, and then I'll re-upload it at that point if I had to.
Like, get it out there.
But I think I'll be able to affect it enough and use small enough clips that there's just no way I'm gonna not catch fair use on it.
Merc Radio has lost tapes.
Oh no, I noticed. I went and looked at your stuff the other day, and it feels like 2/3 of your channel's gone.
Yeah, we got lost tapes. We have whole series that are gone. Echo Chamber, the Late Show Tonight Nights.
Yeah, all that's gone.
Gone. Lost tapes. BBC deleted it, man. Can you believe that? Can you guys believe Merc Corporate deleted that shit?
Well, dude, it had the Possum Patrol on it, dude. Public couldn't see that.
Yeah, it was too much. It was copyright strikes and shit. But yeah, it was. I want to bring back or find a way to re-upload some of the older content. But yeah, there's a whole bunch gone, which is funny because there's still over 100 videos, and most of them are like 2 to 4 hours long. So I'm like, damn, I lost a lot, but didn't.
Yeah.
It's my life.
Yeah. Which, a special guest will tell you, I'll sit down, build a whole track, multi-track, multiple instruments, spend 3-4 hours on it, cut its fucking throat, walk away.
Oh yeah, no, I've done the same thing. It's just like,
Delete.
man, well, that was 7 hours of practice. Delete.
Yep,
Gone. Dead. Killed it.
Hey man,
I do that with Hearts of Iron games.
Oh yeah. Oh.
I'll be like, all right, I just killed China as Japan. Well, that was fun. This is done now. That was a fun 6 hours of my life building Japan and then killing China. Or, oh, cool, I'm the one empire of the UK now again. Time to quit. Am I sure I built those factories in the right order? Let's start from the beginning and see.
I was sore as shit last night. Wee hours of the morning. Fucking finally get Stellaris to work for me. I had so many outdated mods on that it just didn't want to run. Finally get it to run. Rolling blackout. I go to bed. Like, I'm alright.
Fuck it.
Alright, the setup didn't even work. How good could this campaign get?
oh my god.
That is the bane of Paradox games, dude. Every time they put out a DLC, all those cool mods you spent hours finding and making work are automatically broken for the next few days.
Yeah. But that's
And
also-
sometimes longer. Sometimes people aren't updating them because they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
My weirdest hobby is gonna let y'all know how big of both a nerd and just a weirdo I am. Is that I'll set up emulations of computers to get them fully optimized, and then just not know what to do with it. Maybe play a game, save it, go to the next old school computer, fully learn how to optimize it, save it. The flash drive I brought over earlier today, that has some of the files for the map, has 2 gigs of just BIOSes on it.
Hell yeah.
Holy shit.
A lot of BIOS files.
It's
lot of
look. Do you need a BIOS from before for like a game system from before '96? Call me. I have it.
You trying to play Tube?
Yeah, you trying to
play
look,
Tube?
look, do you want to play Toop on the C64 or the Atari ST?
I'm trying to hit up that Zappy the Porcupine.
Zippy.
Zippy. That's what
I've got that
Zippy
ROM. Do you want to play Zippy?
I do want to play.
I've got Zippy.
I do want to play Atari Saints. Or
Dude, I've got a full set of all known Atari 2600 games. I'm ROM hoarder.
That's your superhero name.
Yeah.
I'm Rom Hoarder. What was that comic? Rom?
Yeah, that was a thing that they made for some reason.
You have just the helmet.
Dude, if I could get that ROM helmet, like it would be in the background on my channel. No explanations, never mention it.
Rom Hoarder's just sitting in a stack of cartridges. just with just the helmet on. Man, I really I've loved dipping back into the history of some video games because I came in kind of late to the game.
Oh yeah.
As I've explained to the stream, like really my video game knowledge and love is 100% from Chief. I think he was around when I got my first Xbox 360 and turned me on to like Oblivion, which then I went back and played Morrowind on a PC. Like it sparked a whole like certain field of I like God games and RPGs.
Yeah, I had a computer basically from the time I was born, so I always had computer games.
Yeah.
And then my parents would generally keep some last gen console. I'd be if I asked for it, I'd end up getting a last gen console. So I had like a 2600, then eventually I got an NES after a few years after the NES was out and the prices had dropped, shit like that.
I've been waiting to bring this the fuck up because it feels like everybody fucking missed it in all of their Dune reviews. Because I just recently replayed the Battle for Arrakis.
Oh yeah.
Remember Battle?
Yeah, Dune 2.
Yeah.
No, I guess you played the Genesis version.
Yes.
Man, I need to hook you up with the Amiga version.
I think I had that ROM floating around on that rig.
I'll let me get that for you because it's a lot easier to play that game with a fucking mouse, my man.
Oh word. I dig to say
Like the DOS version's the best version, but like it might run fine for you, it might not. DOSBox is great, but I've had iffy results with DOS emulation. Now I do a lot of my shit on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
So.
But crushing through that. Okay, so do you remember this where they fucking stashed the spice back at the fucking town in the movie? where Super Howlett comes out and shows them like, these are the spice harvesters, and we gotta fill these every 25 days.
Oh God, it looked
Just like Battle for Arrakis. It was the exact.
Wow.
It looked like all of the tech they used to harvest spices. Like a shout out to that fucking.
Here's the
game.
thing. You know why? That game was developed in France.
It was popular as fuck.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was like that's why we have
Well,
things like
it's
Age of
basically
Empires.
we could argue about whether or not it's the first RTS. Like you could make the argument that Laser Squad on the ZX Spectrum, which is the precursor to XCOM, same developer, everything. It's just like it looks like it's running on a shit color Game Boy.
Yeah.
That oh God. See,
Going
that's the
back in
thing.
time and playing that game where you get to feel that like because having like being a Dune fan. At the time when I played the game, it's like all I can fucking watch in anticipation for the new dope Dune is 84 Dune.
Yeah.
Which is its own dope experience.
Well,
It's its own thing.
what I really want you to play is that other Dune game.
Dropped the set out my ring. Sorry.
That other Dune game that came out, like, because the history of those games is that the first game, the other Dune game, was the one they commissioned first. They didn't think they'd get it done in time, so they commissioned another company to make a Dune game.
Oh, that's right.
And then the first company said, "Oh no, we did it." And they said, "Fuck it, put out both of them."
That's right.
That's why Battle for Arrakis is Dune 2. But they came out the same year,
I was
like
gonna
within
say,
months.
Like I played Battle for Arrakis, but there's the other one that has straight up Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, and it's
like an adventure game.
Right? It turns into a sort of RTS.
Okay.
Right, so it's like a cross between a point-and-click adventure and an RTS. You're not walking a guy around; you're doing it from sort of the first person. So it's like a cross between Myst and an RTS. It turns into an RTS, but it's not nearly as good of a RTS type game as Dune 2. That's like the grind for hours, really enjoy game.
Is it themed like David Lynch Dune?
It is. It's got Prince Eric and everything in it, man.
Whoa.
Like we should at some point play that. I would love to play that game with you on stream. And we just play it for some hours and have some fun.
Absolutely.
Because everybody like Dune 2 gets all the love. Dune 1, it's so stereotypically French. A lot of visually beautiful and well thought out games came out of France and Europe, right?
Yeah.
That just didn't get translated unless it made it onto the Genesis because nobody over here had the Amiga or the Atari. Wow. So there's a whole ton of games.
I've been using GIFs from
But they're gorgeous, man. They're gorgeous and well thought out. The French make some amazing computer games. They own Atari now.
The French do a lot in the realm of visual art, going back to like Mobius and shit.
Yeah,
They are fucking insane.
Well, the French art is a big part of that old heavy metal aesthetic, and by that I mean like the magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, this Dune game, it's just gloriously beautiful, and the Amiga at the time I think can only display 32 colors out of a palette of 4,000, so like the aesthetic choices for everything are so atmospheric because they've reduced it doesn't come across as sepia tone, but it comes across as like this shit's almost a painting that I'm playing.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I like that.
Yeah, it's just
what I liked about
super atmospheric, man. I love games like that. Like I get grind games where you're doing math. I get action twitch games where you're like, I understand. I miss the genre of exploration and just thought. I found 2 games that are like that. One is called God Makes God.
Whoa.
And another one, what is it called? The Manhole. And it's weird. The Manhole was put out on Mac in black and white and put out for the TurboGrafx in Japan,
that Google search,
but only in English. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but if you want to play either of these games, you can go to archive.org and it'll load up a fucking Mac in your browser, Mac emulation in your browser with it set up.
That's cool as fuck.
Yeah, so if you ever wanted to do either of those on stream, we just go to the website, call it up.
I like that. Man, I want to kick back and play Mario Party with everybody. I don't care which Mario Party. It could be one on a console I've never played before. But boy, is it disappointing when you get to a party and it's a retro game on screen and you're like, fuck yeah, I'm about to fuck it up. You guys think you know something? Watch the fuck. And it's an N64 controller. And I'm like, oh, shit. Oh, no. I don't know what to do.
I had a friend who, to his mindset, the N64 Turok setup is the ultimate FPS setup. He's like, you only need one analog to play.
That's okay.
And and as somebody who played a lot of non-analog, well, I'd say mouse one hand and then Nostromo speed pad in the other, like keyboard the other.
Yeah.
For people who do that, it makes the most sense. You're used to digital control over the left and right, not analog. You're used to digital for your lower body, analog for your upper body.
Oh, I had a homeboy,
and it makes it so much easier to control.
I had a homeboy in my neighborhood who got the N64, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, I chose the guitar, so sometimes I'll run over to Travis's house, little kid, midsummer. I sound like Joe Exotic. What you playing, man? He's like, Turok, you want to play? Like, if I die, like, fuck yeah, I'll take Nexies. And hands me the control. Dude, I don't know what to do with this thing. I got it in my lap.
Yeah.
I'm using it upwards. I pull my nuts out. I'm hitting the joystick with my nuts. Like, I don't know how to... I end up trying to... Like, I got my toes involved. Like, I don't know how to use the N64 controller. Dude, my brain sees it, and it's like, that's cool art. And they're like, it's a controller. I'm like, for what? Swedish thing?
Dude, Nintendo makes all the worst mistakes.
They make some weird ones. I watched recently the history...
Hey, Christy, hung jury means that the jury can't agree with itself. In a case like this, I think it has to be unanimous.
Yeah. Oh, Erica had asked you in the chat earlier. Sorry. What the Rittenhouse trial? Where your standing is with the what you think? Where you think the jury's at? Think it's hung? You think there's like
it's looking to me like it's hung. Like I can't extrapolate. By virtue of us not knowing anything, but for the reason that MSNBC is not allowed at the trial.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can't really extrapolate. The country's divided. I'm betting if both sides did their jobs in jury selection, then the jury's divided.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to emotionally, does that jury want to go with whose perception of the law? That's the weird thing to me about jury trials. We don't have much better. You can either leave it up to you can either pick a jury or leave it up to a judge. But everything becomes a game of numbers, sort of.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book called Reptile. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's apparently defense attorneys have read it for years. I don't know if they still do, but it's all about appealing to the base emotions through narrative to people, so that you can convince them of your position.
Okay.
What classically would have been called the reptile brain if you follow triune. Like, I don't think triune brain theory is still accepted as science. It's still good methodology for understanding how to hypnotize people.
Procter & Gamble still uses it to hoist up their strange religion.
Yeah.
I don't know, sorry.
But and I want to be clear when I say that like you might hear me reference what they call triune brain, or like lizard brain, monkey brain, and then your ego, your consciousness is the forebrain, right?
Yeah.
I think that makes sense in trying to understand hypnotic theory. Like, not like theory in terms of how to get effects out of people and how to understand them.
Yeah.
But it's a model. Like, it's a model of understanding it. It's not facts. It's just a way to keep it all straight in your head that produces results. So if I say, oh, well, that appeals to the reptile brain, right? I don't mean that you've got a part of your brain that's exactly the same as a reptile. I mean that the most fundamental, the paleocortex of the brain, and the stuff involved with that is the system of the brain I'm referring to.
Yeah, the animalistic survival thing.
Right. If I say your monkey brain or your primate brain, I'm talking about like the area involving things like your amygdala. Those cover an emotional response and reaction.
Bonobo parts.
Yeah, bonobo and chimp part.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then when I say your neocortex, I'm talking about you, like the part you think of as your personality, your conscious stream of your stream of consciousness, basically, that parses the world and is the part you call you in your mind. Yeah, if we were talking like on that subject, because I can talk about that shit for forever. I believe that we're wired generally, not universally, but most people are wired in such a way that the paleocortex has access to all of it, and the neocortex, the paleocortex, the lizard brain, has access to all of it. The mammalian brain has access to the primate brain Oh God, I need something written on the screen to explain this shit. So basically, like the part of you think of as you,
Yeah.
it doesn't have access to your primal brain.
Gotcha.
But the primal brain has access to all the faculties that your neocortex, the you, has. So it understands speech, but it has a different, and it could utilize speech, but it has a different set of priorities than your ego does.
Yeah.
Right? It would be like somewhere between your id and your superego in classic like Freudianism.
Yeah.
You know? And all that the reptile brain gives a shit about is like feeding, fighting, fucking, like all the F's, you know? Like there's no heaven for it. It doesn't think in terms of the future. It thinks of surviving right now. The primal brain thinks in terms of emotional associations with things, because emotions to my mind are a sort of early form of memory.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, okay, well, I can't remember everything, but I can correlate everything bad and have a bad feeling about bad things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously I don't have to explain the part that is us, that we all feel inside of us, our inner monologue or whatever you have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that primate brain can use all the faculties of everything, or the reptile brain can use all the faculties of everything there. The primate brain can use the primate faculties and the neocortical faculties, but the consciousness only has access to the neocortical faculties, and it has to parse and understand and work within the motivations of everything below it, while still feeling good about itself. Right? Still making decisions that, utilizing all those faculties, causes it to feel better than not, so that you have emotional balance and social balance, and can stay effective within an emotional social organism that we call a nation or a state or people or humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
While maintaining all of those things also as an individual in your individual bodily integrity.
Yeah.
And to my mind, all of these things fighting is why so many people have so many mental illnesses. And when I say that, it's because the world around us is designed to exacerbate all of the worries and fears of those primal states.
That's a big theme in a lot of I don't know the right word for it. OTO based theologies, or the or like
My
any
outlook
thelemic kind of things where it's like embrace the primal.
My outlook may sound very, very mechanistic to a lot of our listeners, right? And I need you to understand that that's not my whole outlook. That's just part of it. Like the things that we think of as mystical experiences or spiritual experiences, all of those things that also make us human, are part of the human organism, need to be understood. They don't have to be mathematically parsed out and put on a whiteboard. You got me? But they need to be understood in that they're not a factor to be obliterated. They're what makes humans human. Not to sound like somebody talking to Spock.
It's part of the scientific method. You don't get to understanding what part of the brain is going to tap into collective consciousness without trying to understand the brain.
Yeah.
And there's things like the 100 monkey experiment, which again, just while I'm on the realm of ripping on spirit science, it's something they like to fucking bring up to talk about collective consciousness. It's one of those experiments that, yeah, I definitely think that if we have something like that, it's in that primate emotional side of our brain.
Yeah, I think it is.
And it feels like there's things that humans intuitively can come to that's from an emotional place, from that primate side of the brain. I kind of like that word.
It is, but it's important to access. Like, imagine, right?
I'm gonna make this super ravenous.
I'm gonna make this super simplified, okay? Right? And I'm doing it because I don't have a better metaphor. If I get one, I'll give it to you guys. But let's think of it like a shitty RPG game for a second.
Yeah.
And imagine each one of those gets a score, like a percentage score.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like split. It's like they could all be 0 to 100. Like some person could be 100 in all of them, and I suspect they'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And if a person's 0 in all of them, they're incompetent, like completely incompetent and incapable. Now, once again, I'm not trying to reduce people down to numbers. I'm trying to create a framework to understand these things.
Yeah. Just be analytical.
So you have to understand that if you have an emotional awareness score, we'll call it, or a primal score, primate score, of something like 80, you think you have a 50. you naturally, but if you don't really hold yourself in high regard, you probably subconsciously assume you're average.
Well,
and when you're dealing with a lot of people who don't have the same faculties as you, you're going to get frustrated and assume that they're just being difficult. That happens so often.
Normally, when in literature you're implying a character has emotional depth, what you're saying is they will experience the full realm of human tragedy and happiness in front of you.
Yes.
In the story, right? And so yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like, it's not just.
Well, let's now. I'm going to posit that the neocortex, the bit that we think of as ourselves, is actually a big math machine. That all language is a form of math.
Yeah.
Right. That math is the most precise form of math because it's just the study of number, the study of value, where we make a metaphor of this shape meaning this value, and then have a system that works with it. Its own syntax. Yeah. Right. But that this mathematical metaphor is like a math sense. So a lot of times people who have that are at 100 are what we would call like autistic geniuses classically. I'm sure that doesn't still apply.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming of their worldview, they don't understand why everyone else can't be that intuitive mathematically in terms of recognizing pattern and putting it together, you know? And then you've got people who are jacked up to 100 on survival. Like, you've met them. They're the scariest people in the military. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And like...
Yeah, they're like
And those people are almost always going to err very conservative. Like, they might err towards danger and hedonism, but a lot of them err towards survival, right? It's either about expressing their genes or keeping their body integrity, one of the two, right?
Yeah.
And those people are going to have a lot of issue understanding why so many people don't place so much value on what seems obvious to them. Like you see in all of these aspects. This informs our personalities, the struggles between these, and other people not having the same values, for lack of a better word, of what they call important, that seems important without having to be spoken to them. And it being incongruent causes social stresses.
Yeah.
You know, man?
Yeah.
And if we recognize this about people, we can have empathy and also be open-minded enough to recognize we might have biases and they may have something to teach us. They may do things that seem crazy. Your preppers who keep 4 years of food in an arsenal, right? They're real bent on survival. But, you know, man, your Depression-era great-grandma might really see the value in that.
Yeah. I see language as it's part of our adeptness at pattern recognition, right?
Yeah.
And that's why language is something that fascinates me. It's something I can kind of start picking up on if I watch enough of a language's television. You know what I mean? Like, there's patterns and ways of speaking. I can I'll catch your vernacular quick in English the quickest because that's, you know, what I speak most. But like, I really, I agree with you there where it's almost a form of math, but there's...
Well, think of it this way. You're talking about pattern recognition, right?
Yeah, for me, it's the same part of our brain that uses music, that uses pattern recognition.
Yes.
It's something you can math out, but again, the way your brain is perceiving it in the moment is not necessarily, like, you're not seeing it as mathematics. You know what I mean?
No, and it's because, one, I think music predates language.
It does,
right?
We know it does.
Language obviously predates math.
Yeah.
Math is a distillation of language down to its rawest form because it's just basically the recognition of classes and and understanding of how they interact in a framework, right? So, like, you recognize a 5 and all 5s, including the 5 number key, a group of 5 things. Those are all classed 5. And you know that all 5s plus 4s equal... I'm not getting into numerology, it's like that equals the class of 9, right?
Yep.
Well, all of these things are the same structures that are used in language, but they're distilled down to being nothing but number. It's the language of number, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to say...
English in particular, it has a strange, like, it does something to the brain.
It does. I've talked with you, I think, about this a lot. It's because we describe things before we say what they are, and that puts people into a mild trance while they're building the thing in their mind.
We have a descriptive way of this language is backwards as fuck at time. Germanic as fuck, and the further on we go, the less emphasis we have on tone. Because in the genesis of the language, when it's taught to the aristocracy, that's where you get the implication of tone.
Yeah.
So the lay people don't get the solid English implication of tone.
Well, it's because English. Hold on, let me see if I can do it. Because like Hebrew, English could be understood by someone who's tone deaf.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like it's all about the consonants. You could replace every single vowel like people in North Mississippi do with the letter A.
Yeah.
And still know what people are saying. Yeah. Now a tone deaf person can't speak Mandarin.
No, exactly.
Because it's so tonal.
They can't. Yeah.
Now I believe that language started as little like we watch monkeys sing little food songs, right? And I think it started like that. Consistent melodic interpretation associated with that pattern with a meaning of a thing for the group. And it starts with that building block and eventually gets complex enough to have subject-verb interaction.
Yeah.
Right? Because like that's the most basic thing. Or object-verb. Pick object, verb it.
Yep.
Then combine object with object to verb. Now, if anybody's ever played text adventures, this might sound real familiar. Get lamp.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the most, and that's a command. Commands would have been amongst chimpanzees and bonobos, if you know anything about them, one of the earliest things that they would evolve were their social structures.
Yeah.
And commanding works. Like I can demonstrate on someone who's particularly hypnosusceptible that if I can do a shock induction on them in that time period where they enter into a trance, if they're particularly susceptible, I can probably just yell a command at them real loud and shockingly and they'll do it. Like if you yell sleep at people, they don't go to sleep, but they go into a state that's like sleep and compliant like sleep where they're susceptible to suggestion, assuming that you're not doing anything that contravenes their moral code as they understand it. Yeah. You know?
And our language is like a bastardization of a bastardization of a bastardization of the native language of islands that were constantly invaded.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you know, so we have things that are Anglo-Saxon in our language. We have things that are hella Germanic in nature. We have things that are fucking Frankish in nature.
It removes from the people who speak it the ability to understand structure easily, because the words themselves in most languages are built with concepts based on consistent uses of prefix and suffix.
Yeah.
That's why like the Romance languages are set up that way. But English, because it takes words from everywhere as a polyglot, doesn't like say Latin's the most mathematical language you'll ever learn.
Yeah.
It's weird that they didn't use numbers.
Yeah. Well, some people think there's...
Like they had Roman numerals, which is not conducive to doing mathematics.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know?
There's it makes sense to me in the progression from something like cuneiform to Latin. If you were to look at it that way, it's something that's for trade. You know what I mean?
Well, there's written language starting as a number system.
Yeah.
And once it gets written, right, we have off-brain storage. So we have to develop mechanisms that are innate, reading, in order to be able to utilize this storage.
Yeah.
Which means to go like the meme says, reading's wild. You stare at a shaved bit of tree with marks all over it and hallucinate vividly. Yeah, it puts you in a trance, my man. It puts you in a creative trance.
Yeah. Roman numerals in particular, we're talking about it in like a financial scheme of things. Like if that's what you're using in a financial market, it's almost designed to make those big numbers look really impressive.
Wait.
Oh, it's just this track. I got the sometimes it'll have
there we go.
Yeah, sometimes it'll have a little audio. Sometimes we get a little dude giving a little NPR knowledge.
But yeah, it's really, really hard to do math in Roman numerals because it's not a consistent setup of location of places.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's really easy. Like I'll now posit that America and the world following America's lead through the 20th century as we became the first cyberneticized society.
Yeah.
Has fundamentally reduced everything down to number. We stopped using that part of the brain that really understands language, and now in a very Orwellian sense we are reducing language down.
Yeah.
partially through no longer having proscriptive dictionaries. Like that's insane to me that we can just say, well, people are saying this, so that's what it means. If language is that constantly evolving, fuck cursive, man.
Yeah.
5 generations ahead are gonna have to learn another language to know any history, even watching primary sources.
Exactly.
You know, and guys, this isn't some sort of screed against slang. Do it, use it. Also learn to read appropriately if understanding things is important to you, because it's not just about simply trying to transmit what you believe you transmitted and then assuming they got it. There's a reason we have forms, so that it's definitely clear.
You gotta adapt to your area.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, once again, also, don't assume everybody can understand super clear technical language or shit. I'm bad about that, but I also understand that if in that way I try and come up with a good metaphor that simplifies it down, because, buddy, I got a 29 on the ACT and I had an 18 in math. Like, math is something that took me a long time to get decent at, and it was because I had a couple good teachers that understood the power of direct metaphor for people who weren't into math while I was in the machining trade.
I had a sick ass gauge, and again, like, notice my wordage there. A sick ass gauge for when my vernaculars dipped into outside of lay people talk. You know what I mean? As a kid, sometimes I'd be talking with my younger sister, and she would just simply say, "You're talking too big for me right now."
One of my best friends, man.
Let me let me try to find a new angle.
Well, when I discovered I needed to not always do this was when one of my best friend's dad was watching some politician on the local news when I was young, and he just said, "I don't trust him. He talks too good." And let me tell you, the guy who said that, I happen to know, is a particularly intelligent person. Like, can you rebuild your entire car? Can you run a crane on the dock so well that you could pick up a ping pong ball?
Yeah.
Can you do astounding levels of math in your head? He can. He can tell what to do to not put himself in a dangerous situation. He's a very intelligent person. Not particularly articulate, but didn't need to be within his context, you know? And for the priorities in his life. Sometimes maybe the priorities of your life require you to become really, really damn articulate, if only so that you can understand what people are saying in an almost encoded language and then transmit it to other people in a way that they can, because it's important. So yeah, I don't try and talk over people's heads, but when I get into a mindset talking about these subjects, man, sometimes the only way to not take 5 hours talking about it is going to be to use some pretty damn big words. But you know, this shit's all recorded. There's so many dictionaries. Man, I'm really looking forward to our show today, though, because I've got a bunch of newspaper clippings about this drug pilot from 1983 who, in a court case, they found something like in his skull. And he was claiming the CIA had put a transmitter in there when he crashed his plane and was in the hospital afterward, and were using messages to fucking make him crazy. And the judge orders exploratory surgery. And I don't want to give it all away, but man, it's insane. And that's, guys, that's just the lead-in. That's not even the main thing.
I'm back. Sorry, I had to use the restroom. Grab some tea. Just finished that mango fucking smoothie from down the road, and my bladder was full, gang. Was full. That's one thing I love about this stream, that sometimes the conversations get so deep or so good, I don't want to go pee.
Well, I'm gonna have to pop off for a second, go move my car.
Oh yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. We're in the middle of the city, so you gotta hit a meter and then kind of bounce your stuff around sometimes because of meters or time limits on parking spaces. So, you know, man, this Rittenhouse. Does anybody think it's gonna be resolved today? Is anybody feeling like the Rittenhouse verdict is gonna come in today? I know we get an hour notice in advance. And if I'm in the middle of the tattered map, if it does happen today, then I'm gonna catch up after the fact, I suppose. I'm gonna do like a late night breaking news. But just to get a finale on the series, maybe get a playlist of our Rittenhouse trial coverage. Man. What a... Oh, not back yet? Yeah, Debbie, yeah, no, they're still out. Gotta mathematically be right back with running errands. What was that, Zito? Hey, welcome everybody. It's probably a good time to plug the merch store. I just recently put a couple of stickers up on the merch store. $4 a sticker. Try to get it as cheap as I could. We got the Merc Yes, designed by Gardy. We got the Merctus, Me as a Cactus, designed by Angel. In the merch store. Link in description. And I've been working on some music, guys. Oh. So I'm hoping to have a new record before the end of this year on the Spotify, on the iTunes, on the Zangas, Chief, you know what I'm saying? On the MySpace music player.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can find Merc's music. You can find my music everywhere that you can download music.
For reals.
It's literally everywhere. It's been a good project. That's been the most like the musical side of things with Merc has been really cool. Beautiful to see. Covering 2 people exonerated from Malcolm X killing. Whoa, what, Debbie? Whoa. I'll tell you right now, MSNBC getting kicked out of the Rittenhouse trial is pretty juicy. What the fuck were they trying to do? Get photos of those jurors, dude? Why? That's fucking rude. Covering Astroworld now? Debbie, is there any new news on Astroworld? I mean, Travis Scott has done his best to kind of, you know, express that he's changed, but I haven't seen any like, I don't know. Dude incites riots, still being a wild card, making Big Daddy moves. Tighten your shit up, bruh. Man. I'm also hoping to just chillax and watch Chief play some Hearts of Iron this evening. Boy, that game is fucking cool. I just like the potential alternate histories out of Paradox games, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I just sit around making alternate histories, like, and just kind of watching them in AI mode. Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy the historical mode. Like, I mean, I enjoy both modes. Don't get me wrong, but like, I my favorite thing to do is just sit down and just pick a country and just beat the world with it one way or another. You know. Yeah. So I was excited for Road to 56, is like, because then it'll carry over more into after World War II and like Korea, and like that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
Also terrifying just to watch like the AI and myself just drop nukes on each other eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because eventually they're gonna do it to me, and I'm gonna be like, oh, and then I'm just gonna like drop all 30.
Yeah, dude, I was fucking really spooked that was gonna happen to me in a Hearts of Iron campaign. By that I mean the faction I was observing in AI mode, because they had just nuked Japan once. But dude, there's nothing like those games too when you hit an actual historical moment. You manage to pull off like a historical ass moment. You're like, nah, dude, it's Normandy right now. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty good feeling too. Like if you like the historical modes, or when you try to your damnedest to make the Crusades happen proper in Crusader Kings. That's some of my favorite shit. Those are also games that, you know, don't, as far as I know, don't, Like, if you want to, you can get an infinite fucking mod and just let that bitch roll for forever. Which is the dream. I just have a screen that is an AI universe that I've simulated, just rolling 24/7. So I pop in, check it out, see what they're up to, see if they got new languages or cultures. Cool as fuck. Those games are cool as shit. Like, and they're descriptive enough with these Paradox games that you get these flavor texts. These things happen sometimes in some of these games, like Crusader Kings is a dynastic simulator. So you play a dynasty over time. And it's just some of the things that can happen are fucking incredible. And it's, you know, functionally a spreadsheet operator the further back in time you go, but good games. Alright, let's make sure special guests can get back into the build. Okay, we should be good. Oh, cool. Son's school pictures are on the way. Hell yeah. Let's make sure special guests can get back in. I'll be right back. Sorry, I wanted to hear a little bit of that story on air before I address Gardy over here.
Oh, what's going on?
Discord setup. I didn't mean to click the screen, but we're in it now. Danny says,
I'm back. Sorry.
Sup, Merc? Sorry, I haven't been on for a while.
Been kind of stressed out. What's up?
Oh, man. Oh, man. Beats turned down? Let me tell you, bud.
We're ears.
There's been not a lot going on the chat. I've been kind of sick. Everyone's been kind of sick. Erica, Lux, me. I think special guest's been feeling under the weather a bit this week.
Muscle cramps. I'm fucking pinched neck or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, too much head banging when I was young. Back when I had hair.
Rocking out too hard, dude.
Now I gotta rock that Kerry King.
Hey,
no bad tattoos though.
You got
Not against tattoos.
you know,
I'm against Kerry King's tattoos.
You don't want that full fucking half sleeve tribal. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you got the yin yang on the top of the hand.
Look, guys.
Got the 8-ball on the elbow.
All I'm saying about tribal tattoo is it's the tattoo equivalent of the word groovy.
Dude. Shout out Big Hands Jason.
Oh, I fucking love Jason.
Just,
I've told you my gross Jason story.
yes. But the tattoo.
You talking about the knuckles?
The forearm, right? Isn't that Jason?
Oh yeah, no, you're right. No, I think he does have knuckle tattoos, but you're right. No, he's got, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Sometimes you're young and you let whoever's got a needle and ink start drawing on you.
I'm assuming it was pre the band Disturbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a stamp that says Disturbed.
No, it was before that.
And it's obvious a homie did it.
Yeah.
Probably in trade for some hooch.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just the
total
vibe.
jail quality.
It's the vibe the tattoo gives off, but again, like what it says is Disturbed. And he's a metal ass dude, so it's kind of like, well, you are.
Danny! Oh,
What is it? Hey, what up, John B?
hey, John!
Mine's been kind of
Oh,
evil.
sorry,
Glad
Danny.
she don't have a strap on. Whoa, Dan, that's hilarious. She's been getting aggressive, dog. She's been full lioness, huh? Sorry, Danny.
She's been giving you the squint.
How long you been with your lady, Danny? What time is it where you are? Aren't you like in Ireland or something?
Oh, is he?
I don't know. I might be wrong, but maybe
I could believe a person named Danny Dunn was Irish,
Yeah.
but they might call me racist on that. I'm not trying to be. I think that's culturally bigoted, culturally biased.
Facebook would, but even if you're talking about a specific Italian bastard, they'll give you a ban for saying Italian bastards.
Yeah.
So, I don't
It's
think-
like I can't be like, but I'm talking about Mussolini, not his granddaughter, who is a far right wing person who just won an election in Italy.
Yeah, like
A second
there's
election.
context to what I said. Now, when I said French bastards, I was mad at the metric system, but I also caught a ban for that.
Look, the metric system deserves it. It's wrong. Oh, everything's got to be divisible by 10. How many times you seen a circle done in 400 gons? There's a reason they still use degrees.
Facebook, the metric system, boneless chicken.
Yeah, boneless wings.
Boneless wings. I don't fuck with them. I don't like it. I'm still trying to stream to Facebook, but they let me do 22 minutes of music before they pulled it the other day. Like just the lo-fi lounge. I was just trying to just bounce that over, just even that program where it's just like,
No,
like it's-
Facebook's not worth it, man. I'm
Yeah.
rapidly considering just finally getting off of it.
I'm done with it. I think
Yeah, it's been nice to. I guess I'm still on it technically, but I'm never on it.
Yeah.
The profile exists to prove my wife is married on Facebook. That's what it's for.
Yeah. I want to have a funeral for the platform, and us being on it. Like, all right, let's see if they'll let us stream our Facebook.
Well, now
funeral.
they want to get everybody in VR and AR all the time. They want to basically be your virtual landlord. They one of the things they're going after is specifically faith-based organizations, and by that I mean they're going to try and get churches to start primarily holding services via Facebook. No joke. Look into that. That's not some crazy right-wing conspiracy theory. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh fuck, John B says whenever I hear strap on, I think Joan Cusack and Shameless. Remember that Sheila business? Boy, Sheila's aggressive.
I love the UK Shameless.
She got you held
Every
down
time
and
I've
Sheila
seen
away.
it, but American Shameless is so miserable. Oh my god.
Oh, it's too misanthropic. I love the UK Shameless.
It's
dude.
great though.
Yeah.
Like when I say that, I mean like it's a good show. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have that level of effect on me if it wasn't well-made filmmaking.
Yeah. It's too emotionally gripping
Yeah.
for something that
Yeah.
the source material is kind of
Well, it doesn't
lighthearted.
It doesn't really have any fucking laughs to give it levity, and that's what I really like about the UK version. It's that like
It's funny
because
as shit.
they're all about they utilize that. I know I shouldn't be laughing, but I am.
Yeah.
In a way that does nothing but evoke empathy.
Yeah. No, there's some. I mean, just little hilarious moments in the UK series that you'll never get in the US series. Like when they steal that racehorse, the Irish gang next door.
And they're painting horse.
They've painted the horse at one point, and then the cops are actually onto it, open the back gate, and the fucking mob boss is just on the horse getting his portrait painted. Evening constable, like
like, yeah, this is a normal thing. Why
Yeah.
are you asking me questions or looking in my garden?
they're in like the middle of Manchester. Like,
Yeah.
what was it? Chatworth Estates, something like that. Is the it's a fictional.
Yeah, but
Like,
I'm
'cause
pretty
they-
sure it's supposed to be Manchester.
That's another thing that makes the U.S. version so sad is that's actual Southside Chicago, and it actually looks and feels like actual Southside Chicago.
Well, if you want to talk about just in the realm of bummer shows in the UK made into bummer shows in the US,
yeah,
Utopia. Utopia UK is amazing.
Good.
Utopia US should have been, especially with that cast and everything, but it just was. It was. They changed it so much from the original source material. There's like the only scene that I could say I have a problem with in presentation in the UK one is the pyramid scene.
Yeah.
And man, it didn't even remotely ruin it for me.
I'm-
Arby. You want to talk about having empathy for the people we're talking about in the fucking repugnant philosophy.
yeah.
Arby's a prime example of like them demonstrating how you can have empathy for the worst person on earth.
Oh man, my original idea for the season finale of fucking Echo Chamber was gonna be me and you reviewing the U.S. IT crowd, the failed U.S. IT crowd pilot with Joel McHale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my idea for like the last that we never did.
Like,
it.
you know why that show failed? Because it's not just Joel
yeah.
McHale.
No.
It's because they didn't just bring the two main people from the cast over.
They should have just done that.
And just made them fish out of water in America.
Yeah.
Like everything that worked over there could have worked as a fish out of water tale in general, because they were already that socially by being the IT guys.
It felt as foreign as like that everybody loves Raymond from Russia.
Right.
Where
right.
it's like the humor isn't, they're not even, these writers aren't even shooting.
I still want to see Moscow is always sunny.
Oh, that's right.
Real show.
That's right.
Hey man, they've got an Israeli office.
Yeah.
They've got a Chinese The Office, man. They've got a The Office in so many places. You know, I talk so much about how.
Oh, you guys don't know me from Albanian Friends?
Yeah, dude. I watched you star on that.
I'm Uzbeki Ross, dude.
But yeah, I talk so much about how I think that they're trying to, one, hide the British Empire, so you'll probably see the monarchy go away. But it's still there. And two, re-expand it and reconquer through non-traditionally violent means and through cultural worldview warfare, right?
Yeah.
Well, what British guy has a series that's one of the most popular here in the US since, say, Friends? That's also in every other country, including China?
I don't know who.
What's his name? I can never remember. He made fun of the Oscars.
Oh, Ricky Gervais.
Ricky Gervais, is he a knight yet?
No, I don't think he's. No, I don't think he'll ever be a.
He might.
That'd be cool.
I'll put it this way. He might.
I bet you we'll see James Corden before we.
I'm gonna put it this way.
Here's
Here's what I bet he gets. Right. You know how Michael Aquino
Yeah.
has a barony
Yeah.
under the Duchess of Bretagne?
Yeah.
But it's post 2000 duchy, so feudalism's no longer the law, but they still are the thing.
Yes.
You got me? There's still that part of that royal structure. It's
It's
just
culturally recognized.
but that royal structure is no longer directly connected legally to the country.
It's solely
right?
ceremonial.
It's supernatural, or not supernatural, but supranational. In the same way,
so it
the
is
sovereign
culturally
military order of Malta is supranational. While I was researching, I happened upon a clipping that talked about it on the same page as one of these guys in 67, I think. It might have been 63 when I was looking at Jose Delgado. But how Malta had recently split away from being a British protectorate and was seeking allyship with the U.S. Colin Powell was a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Really?
Yeah, it's basically a Catholic militant order. Think of them as like the Knights Hospitalier.
Yeah. Well, I know they came
Or the
around at the
Templars?
same time as the Templars and the Hospitaller. Yeah.
Right.
They served a different. They were what, like the naval backing in the inception.
So don't
right?
be surprised if they functionally end the monarchy being technically involved in any way with the actual running of the state of England, and then he accepts a knighthood. You got me?
Yeah. Ooh.
Because I think that's coming. I wouldn't be surprised, especially because, the Queen's sick right now. People are saying she should step down.
I just don't think
I wouldn't be surprised if they
just
just end the monarchy.
I just don't think Gervais played ball like they wanted him to, and now they tried to prop up James Corden, who has been in fucking everything for no reason.
Well, I think
And he would take that knighthood in a month.
I would say I think that Gervais played ball in the way that they needed him to for as long as they needed him to, and now he's one of those people that can go pursue whatever, but once you're blessed in, you never get out.
Yeah.
And so if they need something else, going back to the story that I was having you watch that video on, Why would that guy dress as a clown to destroy his credibility?
Yeah.
Right?
I got a feeling...
Because maybe if he doesn't, something happens. Like, he might not care about himself, but there's people he cares about.
I got a feeling we're going to see a few more old fucks sit that throne before that's... it's reestablished. It's just such a cultural thing. It like you said earlier about like even Knights of Malta, supernatural orders. There's
it's still cultural in Scotland.
exactly.
So I don't see it going away. I just see it being ended.
Now, if you
like
were to
the
say,
line's still there, but it's not relevant to geopolitics.
If you were to say Scotland or Ireland might break away, or Wales will decide to break away, word. I feel like word. Word. But like
I think that all those groups are still working together, and they've been normalizing the idea of ending monarchies, but still have all their power.
Oh, well, that's been the push, and you can even see it in something like The Crown.
Because
where you have prime ministers show up who they ran on a platform that seemed like they were opposing the monarchy.
Because the monarchy has its own non-governmental secret services.
Yes.
You got me? That don't report to anyone but the Queen.
Yes.
And they will take them with them. And their state secret services are not only aware of that, you can be certain they fight amongst themselves. They historically have.
Yeah, well,
in England, as much as the FBI and CIA.
You're in any branch of the military, and that's your boss.
Yeah,
that's your boss. That's the commander in chief.
Right.
You know? So
well, and if they divorce that, right, then suddenly she's got some people sworn to her. It's the Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Well, and more
who has a bunch of people in the U.S.
Yeah, more than that. She's got a few different
and the Gurkhas.
Well, and the Ninth Guard, who are wealthy people, and you have, a lot in her pocket, or just in the monarchy's pocket.
Yeah,
culturally, they're like cemented in a way that's like Bene Gesserit levels of like.
My argument would be that quite often a lot of what we think of as ceremonial guards are more like a dry docked fleet.
Yeah.
It's like, don't think they can't still do their jobs.
Oh, well, they'll let you know. They'll let you know in any of the documentaries on the BBC, like, oh no, it's ready. It looks cute, but it'll roll out.
Well, it's like
post World War II. We'll roll out.
In America, you think of ceremonial positions like guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier as being something that they must put a useless person in to just walk around all day. I assure you they do not. They put astoundingly excellent people in those types of conditions to condition them to tedium.
Yeah.
There are 4 guard pistols made by SIG that are super high end, and they have names like they're not like Excalibur, but they're named as if they were Excalibur.
Yeah.
And they each get one of those super important to American culture pistols to guard that. These people have to be top of the top because of their role as ceremonial positions, but also their role within that makes them so astoundingly dedicated to the job.
We used that mindset when we had to expand. Suddenly we had a whole bunch of new land in America and we had to go out. What was the thing to become? You could go be a marshal, you could go be a fucking sheriff of a popped up fucking town.
I was looking down and totally missed what Danny was saying. He says, I fell in love with Carol in 76. Her mom moved out of state in 84. She found me on Facebook in 2015 and we're engaged. I'm an old Irish hippie raised on 80s metal and reunited with my first love. I should write a biography. I wonder who'd play me in the movie. You should write a biography. Also, are you a fan of the band Raven? Like, tell me if you know anything about this band, because I had one of their tapes when I was a kid. Really enjoyed it as a kid. Totally forgot about them. Saw a documentary on them the other day that I meant to click on and just brought it to mind.
Word. Raven.
The record I had was pretty heavy for its era.
Yeah.
Like, that was one thing that really stuck out. I was like, these guys can play. Like, they're still a little bit in the theatrics mindset of performance. Like, it's not a rough vocal performance. It's a more of the old school high pitched vocal performance.
Question: opening for Wasp, they stealing the show?
No, because Wasp has a better stage show. So we're talking in a live context, right? But if you listen to the show on the radio, it's Nixon versus JFK. You got me.
Okay, gotcha.
You think Raven took it?
Gotcha. I remember him, Danny.
Hell yeah.
Raven.
Hell yeah.
Okay, hell yeah.
I love 80s metal, man. Like, I love pretty much all metal. Modern metal bores the holy shit out of me for the most part, but it's because it's all the same things happening over and over again. Post-gent, it's either retro or gent. Yeah, it's so cannibalistic, but it's got a huge amount of history to cannibalize from now. Oh well, it seems we may have a visitor. Oh, it's management. Management, man. Yeah, I think they're doing inspections today. The Reddit post stuff.
We're here to Tuesday.
Well. So tense.
We need to check for a water leak.
Oh, they got to check for a water leak. Well, this was sudden. But I guess, water waits for nobody. You still believe aliens are running the world from the Antarctic? I'm generally one of those people that blames the Reich versus the aliens, but I think you're onto something with the Antarctic for sure. Just grouping podcasting, yeah. Oh wow, Germany's COVID cases hit record high. Damn. So I guess we're probably all looking toward another big lockdown.
What's happening for a new lockdown?
Cases are going through the. It's the cops. No, it's the maintenance. The cases are going through the roof over in Germany, and not just Germany. It's pretty well worldwide. Apparently, the newest variant's particularly transmissible. Maybe the Reich or the aliens. There's a whole line of conspiracy out there about that. If you're interested, you might check out a guy named Joseph P. Farrell. I think he's probably done more interesting research on that.
We're going to take a break. They got to check for a water leak real quick.
Gotcha. All right, we'll be back, guys. I've come to the realization almost all of the gun shows I watch online are shot in Arizona.
I believe that. There's some news open.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gun Jesus lives here.
Oh yeah. I think you're right. All right. Sorry about that, gang. Maintenance dude stopped by because there's a leak. Maintaining. There's a leak downstairs somewhere, and we're like, we got a person above us and a person below us. I think they're just tracing a leak. Come in, flush that shitter.
Okay, really, it was the CIA come to threaten us. We're not doing the tattered map.
We can't anymore.
Also, I have to get a clown outfit.
It'd be funny if we came back in clown makeup. We're like, we'll see you guys for the tattered map, I guess. Next, I don't know.
Whenever they say.
We do it the completely transparent and complete map. The complete,
The whole and wholly accurate map.
the whole and wholly accurate map. Brought to you by PBS, Procter and Gamble, and the DMV.
And the Carnegie Foundation.
The Carnegie Foundation. Oh man.
Yeah, y'all remember in the 80s back when grapes had seeds and everything was sponsored on TV by the Carnegie Foundation? Like, I saw that Carnegie Foundation bumper so many times as a child.
Oh man.
On everything on PBS.
Danny Duns is maybe the Reich or the aliens.
Yeah, no, I was saying before we went off that Joseph Farrell
Yeah.
is the guy to look into for that. Like a lot of what got me down this hole too is just stuff. Joseph Farrell does an excellent book on JFK,
Oh.
right? Called A Coalescence of Interests, and it's what really got me on the whole. Oh man, maybe the book Illuminatus is a little bit of this.
Yeah.
You got me, because maybe the thing is there were so many people there, and I think that the reason there would have been one of the stories we're going to talk about on the Tattered Map today is one of the guys who didn't shoot because JFK had already been shot a little earlier down the line, and that they had assassins set up at so many different checkpoints to be able to ensure they could catch him in a crossfire.
Oh shit. Oh, I changed pants on. Can't find the light.
Hold
on. Keep chatting.
But if you're talking about celebrity clones, well, I believe not so much in celebrity clones, though. There's a town in Argentina that has a huge post-war German population that has the largest amount of twins in the world, and it'd be ridiculous to think that those post-war Nazis that we know that survived in South America, which is not that far from Antarctica, considering, weren't interested in genetics. Like, the boys in the Brazil is pretty interesting in one sense, just because it's a straightforward extrapolation of what they might have been up to. And Bavaria, I was straight off, like, when I think about that, I think about the whole, like, Bavarian Illuminati, which in many ways is mimetically was put out there by the Discordian movement, which the Discordians are something I'm super familiar with because I considered myself a Discordian for a long time.
Sorry, that cat just ran full speed from in here into the window. With, like, no control.
But yeah, not even so much celebrity clones. One thing that you'll hear me talk about is that I think that they probably have. I think that people become roles sometimes, right? So there might be a role that you get cast into or recast, and then they'll keep recasting that role. Like, I think that David Ferry may have been Michael Aquino, and that they faked David Ferry's death and pivoted him into this identity of this guy named Michael Aquino. David Ferry he was associated in the overthrow of Guatemala. He worked with the CIA but wasn't technically CIA, worked with E. Howard Hunt, died mysteriously, was questioned and heavily involved in the investigation into JFK.
You see it, okay.
And then he becomes Aquino. But the timeline, like, I'll tell you right now, well, there's a 40-year age gap. Yeah, but Ferry had alopecia and had to wear a wig and fake eyebrows all the time, right? So he becomes this Aquino character, literally character. And then at some point he dies and they recast Aquino with somebody who looks very, very much like him, who's probably been trained to be him and even believes they are him. Right? Now you're saying, well, why would you do this? One, to throw off the continuity.
Yeah.
Right? I know that sounds absolutely insane and working backward, but that's how you figure out how a magic trick works. Yeah. And I'm trying to think like a stage magician on this. You got me?
Yeah.
So as people age, they're going to become easier to recast. They just go away for 5 years and come back looking a little different, but still basically the same.
Just to lube anybody up who is a fan of comedy, Andy Kaufman had that character. What was his name? But the character is there's still people playing. It's still a character you can book for a fucking show.
Exactly. Him and his manager played the character.
Yeah. Yeah. Like showed up on fucking Taxi at one point.
Yeah,
with Andy Kaufman in the room. Like they
Tony
were
Clifton.
Tony Clifton. They were doing shit like that with Tony Clifton. Hey, what up, Christy?
So, hey, Christy. So, you've got this idea where you've got characters out there that are utilized to obfuscate actual history.
Yeah.
And actually can become, in the case of Michael Aquino, central history makers.
Yeah.
You know? And anybody who doesn't know about Michael Aquino, one, he doesn't have a Wikipedia, but he does have an... Oh my god. Yeah, look, Michael Aquino. You should look it up. It's Aquino if you're not familiar with...
He got the... Hold up. Here. Yeah, let me pull him up.
But yeah, he joined the Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, broke off into his own group, and had LaVey's daughter join him. And he is what's called a theistic Satanist. Like he's like, oh no, there is an entity known as Satan. He's not so much a Christian Satanist. He calls himself a Setian, right? And his concept is that it's a what was the word? Thought form, basically.
Here's the picture, dude.
Yeah, there we go. And he passed a few years back, but they didn't announce it until supposedly a year after he passed.
He got some eyebrows like a Power Rangers villain.
Yeah, or a Mentat.
Or a Mentat. Yeah. Oh fuck. David Lynch. Damn it.
Well, not just that. If we're trying to tie that in, you look at another Satanist group, the O9A. You look at, if you read their books, which I don't suggest anyone go research them. I really don't. Like, you don't want to know about. I'll tell you some. Go read it. Whatever, man. You've been fucking warned.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to gatekeep for you. I'm just saying. Yeah. That they are on the terror watch list. But their stated end goal is literally a galactic imperium that reads like fucking Dune.
Oof. So I was trying to build last night in Stellaris. I was rewatching Dune and playing Stellaris.
And it's like it's like really Reich amongst the stars too, because they are Nazis. Like they are heavily involved with the National Socialist movement and intentionally go out to recruit extremists like Nazis or Islamofascists. Their principal writing is done by a guy named Anton Long, but it's probably a group of people writing under the name. Most people are under the impression it's a man named David Mayat, who does have a Wikipedia, and if you look that up, yeah, he was associated with multiple neo-Nazi groups before in '99 he converted to Islam, and not ISIS. And I want to say he worked for Al-Qaeda for a while.
I want to say it was Al-Qaeda,
yeah. And he would be like chief theologian of the ideology of that. But I think O9A is a split off of the process, and I think Temple of Set is a parallel group to the process. And I think that they all probably work for a larger overcult of some type that we might as well just call Project MK Ultra Cult Command.
Operation Mind Control.
Yeah, basically Operation Mind Control. Very deadlocked. Yep. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Is that what James thinks, or is that what's going on?
No, he just said jury deadlocked. I don't think he'd make it just a statement like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be replying to anybody.
I don't see a...
No. As to human cloning, could be. Like, that's the sort of stuff you would think that would be done off books, right?
Yeah.
And we know the Raelians, that weird cult's been working on cloning since the 90s. And they're like Scientology big, you just don't hear about them.
Yeah.
Like, because they don't recruit celebrities, they recruit scientists. Huh. Like the Finders did.
Yeah.
Now we'll do one on that.
They're not looking for like the fame. They're looking for the
I've got a whole interview with the founder of the Finders where he talks about how
they requested
the Rosenbaum footage. Okay. But yeah, where he talks about how he's been running a private intelligence operation since the 30s. And this guy was heavily involved in computers starting around 79. So as soon as home computers become a thing they're selling and you can buy and carry around, he's got one. He's setting up his cult with them. They're transporting files and taking Intellix intercepts and running a complete, what I think is modeled on what was going on in Chile in the decade prior with their like they had wired their whole nation in a way. You know, you heard about how Argentina's entire citizenry lost all their shit, got hacked for all their biometrics, passwords, and everything because they have a centralized database.
Yeah.
They started doing that in Chile in the 70s on people.
Holy shit.
Yeah, all this technology that we're worried about now, the CIA tested in South America in the 70s and 80s. And as home computers got out, and then one day I want to do another show, basically, that juncture of about 1980 is where we jump over to the focus on the other show.
Yeah.
And it's about how they utilized, instead of how computers became the new LSD, and led by Timothy Leary.
Damn. Oh, look, Turtle Judge is back.
Oh, Colin Robinson.
It's Colin Robinson, dude. He's an energy van. Look, he's eating right now.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on here?
Thanks, Mom.
You don't request more evidence at the end of day 3. That's true. This may be a 6-6 deal by the requests they have made. Ooh.
And I'm going to ask you to return tomorrow at 9. Is that?
He's dismissing the jury.
And I know we're over our time that I talked about initially. Your magnificent jurors. Please adhere to the same rules. Please watch or listen to any account of the trial. And
Don't need no jurors on Merc Radio. Fucking stay out of here. I don't want to see you. I don't want to know what you look like.
That's not your job.
Not my job.
You're gonna get a book
thank
deal.
See you tomorrow.
Which is sort of gross.
Not your job, not my job. How big do you think the broom was she rode in on? I'm sorry.
Ooh!
I'm sorry. She knows what she did. I'm sorry.
The answer is yard decoration-sized broom.
Sir, that says the back defense, so I know it is reading meter. But now the record will reflect that it's probably a bad habit to ask the jury any questions. You can do that. You can get away with that a lot, and then all of a sudden you learn your lesson. Although I don't think there's any harm to it. But I typically do that, as you know, throughout the trial. And
I do what I want because I'm Colin Robinson, energy vampire.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I did it a second time. But anyway,
You're really soaking
the
in
record
this
will
shit
reflect
show.
that when I asked,
Respect
when
the
jury
jury.
You know, this guy's
inquired
having a great
if
time.
she could
Like
take
that's
the
why I don't like this
instructions.
judge. He's obviously having a great
They
time.
took the instructions home. I didn't see reaction from the state side. I did see a wag of the head by Mr. Richards urging me to say no, but I did it anyway. So, did you want to make a record on it?
I'm afraid it's going to be the old dictionary game, and they start defining words and things like that, the outside research.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Well, actually, no, because they could do that at home without having the paperwork, and instead they have the wonderful, concise jury instructions that I have to say, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I watch a little TV in the morning and in the evening, and some of the greatest legal minds in the country.
Oh no! Oh
I'm
no!
delighted to say agree with us that the instructions are very confusing. But
The only thing I would say is I don't think it would be appropriate for them to bring their notes home.
no, you're right about that. No notes to go home. That's correct.
Why?
So no
Why?
notes to
Like
go, but
the
they
way
made
we tried to mechanize how
If they have
juries
notes
work
on
is
their
ridiculous.
instructions, I'm going to let them take
Mm-hmm.
notes. Okay?
In what way do we quantify
anything
people's judgment
Okay.
and give them a
in
measured
the
place to do it? How do you
Thank
do
you.
that? He really shouldn't be talking about watching TV, laugh out loud. Yeah, that's what I felt, Jameson.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of this judge.
Is it time to go hit that lazy boy?
Also, can't they get these courtrooms wireless? Man, the aesthetics here. Gaff tape everywhere, wires.
Oh, dude, the sound game, watching news shit, like the more local to Florida you get, the worse the sound game is.
Oh yeah, no,
We're
totally.
talking
The
sometimes.
South has always had the worst sound.
We're talking only left, so down mix to mono, panned hard left. Half the mics are off. Like, that's what you'll get out of a Florida press conference in any of those counties, dude. Those counties have trash sound, dude. I could run sound from a fucking couch better than these people are.
Denny says they have us under so much surveillance the FBI probably knows how many rolls of toilet paper we each use weekly. Cameras everywhere. I hard agree.
Yeah. Damn, Jameson says day 4. I said all week if it gets past 2 to 3 days, Rittenhouse is in some shit. I hope he's nervous. I personally think he, shouldn't have been out there being Paw Patrol. But, again, it's about,
Okay, here's my thought too. Why are we taking these civic institutions, right? Like the police department especially. Like fire department, lifeguard, okay. Sure. Like I get it. Police department, because of the nature of what the police department is, maybe we shouldn't have junior police academy, y'all.
That's something we've talked about and we all agree with, and it's specifically I think it was not just you, but Asia was bringing this is drilled in, or Lux was bringing it was drilled into them.
Yeah, well, no, and this is
drilled into
like so many times, you'll see people who, if we are giving human beings the benefit of the doubt and not engaging in the mind reading fallacy about their motivations.
Yeah.
As young people, right? Or even as older people who want to be involved in their community.
Yeah.
They get involved in groups like that. Right? And I sound like I'm talking about a terrorist organization, which is also sort of miserable to even have to put it in terms that feel that way. They get involved in groups like that, are being taught functionally, you're the first line of defense against all of the criminals. And as we become more radicalized, and also as, Target just shut down one of their stores in Santa Barbara because it was dealing with $25,000 a day in theft.
Yeah.
Like, as we're seeing these sorts of things also happen around the country.
There's no stores on, Melrose anymore.
And it's not just, it's happening there, but people are seeing it nationwide. It presents to them a feeling that it's the hunt at the gates.
Yeah.
And they're very, very worried about them and their people and their stuff.
Well, that's why you should word it like a terror group, is because they're radicalizing, in my opinion, like some of these groups, far right in particular, needlessly and with no help from any outside.
Well, they did it in the past with the Civil Air Patrol. You got me? Like the Ferry meets Oswald when Oswald's 15 as a Civil Air Patrol cadet. Civil Air Patrol was working with the military because we're in the middle of the fucking Cold War. That was I want to say the late 50s, So we have a history of doing this sort of stuff going back to immediately past the Cold War.
Yeah.
It's been institutionalized in our society the whole damn time, and we never address that this is what we consistently have gotten out of it.
Well, it still reeks to me of them, tearing those factions into terror groups, and then it just reeks to me of a roundup. Like the way everything has played out on both sides, because they radicalized to the point of violence, both sides.
Yeah.
And then you round them up.
Well, not just and when you say radicalize the point of violence, I think we always need to remember to interject. There were people engaging in what we can technically define as violence because they had legitimate grievances and no real capability of expressing that in a way that could get them any recourse against what they were dealing with.
This is the same government rounding people up in black van. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same person that poked the bear that's tranking the bear.
Well, and so they get everybody amped up so that they can also, at the same time that they're rounding up everybody, they definitely get the people strategically that they wanted.
I'd love to know who all they actually got during Jan 6 and how their health is, because did they have something put in them? I think a lot about, particularly with the train of conspiracy we've been on with the tattered map lately. I think a lot about how easy it would be if you were to go through a federal prison, the diagnostic situation, or you think you got to have a benign something removed and you're incarcerated.
Yeah.
and they just do it, but what could they leave behind?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And what if some of these things people have in them are just fucking like piezo pickups? Like they're just
Well, yeah, and I think that quite often it is something just that simple.
Yeah, because they know these fuckers are going to be on the grid. They know that they're trying to get off the grid. They're gonna. How do you get them on the grid?
Right.
A motherfucker that's slick enough to not have a cell phone. Someone who's not just walking around talking about vaccines or trackers. He's like, no, I know they're out to get me.
Look, we know this. We know this technology in a different form exists currently, mostly through research from the Michael J. Fox Foundation, because they use all the stuff that was used in the movie The Terminal Man to control Parkinson's, and very well. Which is, like I said, one of the reasons that I'm not against the utilization of any technology to make people healthier, even if it would seem gruesome what they have to go through to even have it implanted. But that's, I'm not a surgeon.
Yeah.
Right? I think any surgery is sort of gruesome, also sometimes necessary. So yeah, I'm not against wires in people's heads, say if they have Parkinson and it's an effective treatment.
Yeah.
But let's know where this shit came from and understand that maybe that technology can be used for multiple things.
Yeah.
You got me? And now that we're seeing things being developed like Neuralink, suddenly...
Yeah. These things seem like, right around the corner, like they would, like it was the 80s again. Like it was the 80s again, now the cyberpunk future is right around the corner, baby, here in 20 years. We'll be in those flying cars, not relying on petrol. But
that's what they're hoping for.
I got a feeling we're gonna be there. Sorry, we're looking at a totally globular Earth. Any flat earthers out there, piss off. And hey, hi, hello, flat earthers.
Yeah, technology available as to today the government had 30 years ago. Well, I'm going to posit it even further back, right? Mm-hmm. Technology we have available as today, the government had operational generally 30 years ago and had in experimental forms often 30 years before that.
Man, I fell asleep watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries talking about the original bassist from Iron Butterfly.
Yeah.
Who was working on facial recognition technology in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And ended up getting, he died mysteriously.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if he died just like that screenwriter.
Exactly.
Like, did he die or did he get sheep? Did he decide, Iron Butterfly's not doing anything, this is what I'm into, I've got my residuals, but I'll let them take care of people I care about, and I'm going to get sheep dipped in because I've stumbled on something and I'm useful.
The thing I can't stop thinking about is if you were to, you could probably get a hard copy of this shit if you look at the residuals and shit for Iron Butterfly. What is the okay, in the 90s, if you have a flashback to the 60s, what song are you playing in your movie?
Well, not just that.
You're playing fucking Inagata-Davida.
Also, The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, hard. Yeah. But like it's,
like The Simpsons has that song utilized in it, held through a whole fucking episode.
That's true. That's true.
Like the residuals on that track in particular. Yeah.
Well, and specifically through the 90s when this guy died.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, well, it's I'm trying to think of who did a setup. Oh, Jimi Hendrix. I almost came out here to do the guy who probably killed Jimi Hendrix.
Oh shit.
But no, the way that Hendrix's estate went afterward, dude. And how much money he probably stole from Hendrix. Probably 70% of Hendrix's money while Hendrix was still alive.
Whoa.
And it was all run through a fucking money laundry in the Bahamas, a corporation he'd set up called Yameta, and everybody was just an employee of the corporation. Oh. So like if Hendrix needed something, he'd like, I want a new guitar, they'd cut a check. Oh. So they were running the first I can find on him like they do rap stars now.
Yeah. Whoa.
I know a little something about this one, fellas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, please. I spent most of my research time last week studying that, and as per usual, it's a story for next week probably because I stumbled into a bunch of other stuff. But go ahead.
Well, just the little bit that I took away. I was very much into that song for a while because it worked really well with most LSDs.
Oh, you're talking about Inagata-Davida?
Yeah. And me and a friend of mine, I don't know how truthful he was about it. I'm sure it meant nothing. But if you're told something, while you're under the influence, you can easily believe it. And so this friend of mine set up a whole scenario that made that song like it was about a serial killer going into a house,
right?
And the instruments, okay, because of what they did with the guitar, it sounded like somebody getting sliced, and it all worked perfectly. Okay?
Right.
But years later, I'm watching a documentary, and it was the same one I told you other facts about, different ways they've, solved crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the cold cases was the case of he was like only 15 when he was playing with Iron Butterfly. Get the guy, right?
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was only like 15.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was,
youth
he
recruiting.
was like he was some kind of child prodigy. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his other hobby besides the band was he actually worked as some sort of scientist, engineer of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, the part that's interesting is he was. Well, hold on, I got a motorcycle. I'm sorry. Anyway, he was very much into some new breakthroughs, and I don't know, let's say powering automobiles with something other than gas, all that sort of thing. Whatever it was.
Are you talking about from Iron Butterfly?
Yeah.
No. It was facial recognition technology.
Well, no, it was in the 90s. He was working on that, but he had been like this. You remember I had brought up lasers. Right?
Yeah.
I think he. I
no,
think,
he was at MIT for lasers for a period. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. I think
which
so.
puts him with fucking Hal Puthoff and the dudes from Stanford Research because of Massachusetts. Leonard Kyle. Sorry, go on with the story. I apologize.
No. Whatever it was, okay, I'm wrong on that, of course, but whatever it was important enough that there was a need to shut him down. Okay. And the next time anybody heard or saw him was when they found his remains at the bottom of a ravine, okay, in his van.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a mystery how he ever got there, and we're talking about this would be the mid 70s, okay, or maybe even into the 80s,
what I think happened, right? Because I want to say that he died in like 92.
Yeah, this was the early 90s.
Okay, but what I think happened, if I had to throw it out here, right? You got a child prodigy. We saw this with Tommy Dowd in the fucking Manhattan Project, who's working on secret laser or whatever research, and lasers were big in the 70s because they were working up to SDI, right? They had we could go on about the crazy laser plans they had as contingency plans, okay? They used bombs to make lasers. It's insane.
Yeah.
But, so he might have been aware of all of this secret shit, but he's a prodigy and thus a useful person. Quite often, these people are also musicians, so they'll have them on hold functionally in case they need him for something else. I think that once Timothy Leary made computers, the LSD of the 80s, he gets into facial recognition tech, and just like how they stole the Promise software, is what it was called in the 80s, they probably wanted his software, and if either they killed him or they fucking put him in a new role, new character.
Damn.
Well, hey, I got to mention something to you. I mean, you were talking about maybe bringing this topic up exclusively for your next week, show. So that would indicate
the one I was talking about was the guy who killed Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, forgive me.
But hey, I can start looking more into this one because I've never put this together like that. Because the whole Timmy Leary in the '80s thing is relatively new to me.
Well, I'd like to see what you think because you just mentioned, the 80s made the computer the new asset, right?
Yeah.
And that struck a chord with me because talk about how weird things sometimes happen, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You guys had to go. You had to go for a minute because the people were checking your water out or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I immediately went back to the homepage on my YouTube to see what's shaking, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy I watch from time to time called the Nostalgia Nerd. Okay, and he talks about obsolete technologies. Okay,
yeah, dude, I watch him.
Okay, well, his story right now that's just been posted, I guess, a little while ago, blew my mind because it was 45 minutes. So I didn't watch the whole thing, but I just wanted to get a feel for what it was going to be. Seems interesting. Okay,
right?
We're talking about 1986. All right, some cat in England. Okay, a couple in England. The guy's a teacher. They're introducing computers, which I didn't know they were doing that early, right?
Oh yeah, No, let me get back to that in a minute. Let us get back to that in a second. But go ahead.
Okay, a primitive version of a computer like we would have in the home now.
Mhm.
So, and the funny thing was there was a little extra chip you could put in it. I guess like putting an SD card in, And this was called not Ed Wood the filmmaker, but Ed Ward Word, WORD, right? So it was a one-word title for this piece. So you plug it in and it gives your computer, I guess, whatever. But it was back when all they had was DOS display, okay?
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so this just blew my mind. So it's 1985. The guy's going to be introducing this to his students, so they let him have a copy himself to take home and work with to familiarize himself. And he had somebody staying with him and his wife, and he stayed in the room where the computer was, but he worked on guitar and stuff. And so if he used it for anything, it would have been to, compose music.
Right.
So they left it on, they go to a bar, they come home, and lo and behold, there's a new file on the computer, and they open it up, and it's a person using the perfect dialect from the 1500s. Okay, and they said some things, and I can't quote it because it was like thou are referring to Master so and so, and signed LM. Okay, signed LM. So they read all this. They said this is a pretty elaborate hoax if somebody's fucking with us, right? So what is this, right? So they type back some stuff. They ask some questions, and lo and behold, the next day they get a response. And the person says that they're in his house, okay, and their house was an old farmhouse that had been restored to apartments, okay. So now the guy tells them a few details. They tell him they're in 1985, okay, and they don't understand. But what year is he in? And he says 71 or something, right? Well, somehow the next person to get involved, because that person from the 1500s referred to a person by the name of 2106. And that actually represented the year this person came from. Okay. And he said, the guy from the 1500s said, oh, you don't talk like your friend from 2106, and you don't use the same kind of light box. And they go, light box. So they asked him to elaborate. And basically, long story short, they get the information that tells them this 1500s person has been talking to this other person that was even further away in the future from us. Okay. And so now they're getting messages back and forth. And finally, a message came directly from 2106 to these people in 85. And that told them something about how they work off of some such type of power that they can travel universes in a matter of seconds.
I've heard this story before. It's a pretty old. Right? The story's a pretty old piece of what they called Usenet lore. Really? I can't really comment in terms of like the way I parse it is part of a very complex psychological operation against the Russians that would take me forever to get into.
Right.
But I'm not certain that I believe that story like that the story's accurate in that it happened. I believe that the story was created as part of a psychological thing, and now we're seeing sort of the ephemera of it 40 years later.
Well, it was mind blowing because they even went as far as some experts came over to check this story out.
I'm going to check out that video though. Because I've heard this story, but I haven't heard any sort of recent analysis or anything tied to it. So you've definitely piqued my curiosity with that. Now, one thing I was going to say. Go ahead.
Vertical Planes is the book about this whole thing.
Vertical Planes. I will definitely check that out. If you can put it in the Discord, that would be cool.
Okay, yeah, no problem, man. But anyway, that kind of shit blows my mind. I told you about the guy who got the television signals from the 50s somehow on his modern television. That kind of stuff always fascinates me,
you had said you didn't realize they were putting computers in schools. I'm going to posit that they computerized England far before the U.S. We were about 10 years behind them. They were more about, instead of getting game consoles, they got their kids computers. And they had a genius over there named Clive Sinclair, who was just the tits in fucking miniaturization technology. Made the smallest TVs, you know, had been for fucking 20 years. He made a computer called the ZX Spectrum that was 100 pounds. I think they eventually started selling them for like 50 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a color Game Boy, like first gen Game Boy that you could program. And dude, it created a software industry of children, millionaire children from their schools, because the storage medium was a cassette. So it was really easy and cheap to distribute your software, etc. So there's a reason so many computer programmers and people within the IT field are in England, and it was part of England's strategy to basically cyberneticize their culture and get them fully engaged with computers starting as children.
Okay.
That's interesting. Because I always wondered why I saw back in the day when you first started seeing computers per se, like Radio Shack.
Yeah.
I always noticed the cassette player connected to, you know, some part of it, and I didn't know what that did, but apparently it was a necessary part of the computer experience.
Yeah.
It was a cassette player.
Well, it would take 5-6 minutes to load a program at first. And so once we started adopting computers relatively en masse with the C64, we went with the disk drive. It was faster, but they figured out tape loading compression that was so fast, it was just as fast as a disk drive. So they're operating much cheaper per unit per person, if you're thinking like equipping a military, to get the same sort of thing. And they're teaching their kids from literally grade school, because everybody's got to have one and you can actually afford it. It was 5-6 times cheaper than the Commodore machine.
Well, planting the seeds at the time to potentially tap into like what Japan had going on with their family computing.
Absolutely. Well, everybody was making their own computers because they were terrified of Bill Gates and the Japanese with a standard called MSX that was like a DOS before DOS. It was a games computer. It's where Metal Gear and fucking Castlevania originally showed up on. And it's not the best gaming platform. By the time it's done, it's a great one with upgrades and stuff. But anyway, but they were relatively cheap, and they were worried that they were going to flood the domestic markets. So you've got Clive Sinclair and Alan Sugar in England, basically, who are creating computers to flood the market to make sure the Japanese can't afford to ship them over there as cheap as possible.
Okay.
And then over here, you've got Steve Jobs, you've got Bill Gates, you've got Jack Trammell of Commodore, and then you've got like eventually IBM, and then you've got TRS-80, Radio Shack, which I think TRS-80 was tied with the fucking government. Because you could pick up a TRS-80 computer anywhere in the nation in a way you couldn't any other standardized platform during the late 70s and early 80s.
That's wild. See that, and I don't know.
And that's why the Finders used them.
It's like a calculator name, you know what I mean, too. It's almost like
it meant Tandy Radio Shack for the 80s.
You know, I've always had an interest in, like I said, sweet technology.
Yeah.
And there's another guy on YouTube, and he's called Oddity Archive, right? And he shows you all these things, like, you know, your very primitive computers and things. Something that blew my mind about early video rentals and things like that. You know, I worked in a video store early 80s, okay? And one thing I didn't know about, or I was kind of familiar with from the late 90s, okay? They actually had a technology, and I was interested because it started in my hometown, apparently, but Circuit City, okay? The appliance and the computer shop, you know, Circuit City, kind of like Best Buy. And they're long gone now, but what they used to sell was they used to sell you DVD players when they just came on the scene. And they would have this rental program called DivX, which I know also is a kind of,
but it was a different standard. I remember it was a like a DRM standard, right? So that you definitely couldn't copy it, and I think some of them wouldn't even play after a single view.
No, you rented it, and if you didn't watch it in 24 hours, it would self-destruct basically, and become ruined. And that program, it was pretty popular for a while. You'd go rent the movie for like $4, and you know, if you wanted to keep it, too bad, because it automatically has like some kind of time-released destructive thing. I don't know how. And that technology gave way, of course, when, you know, we started, you know, being able to mass produce and buy DVDs anytime you want.
Yep.
But this thing, it blew my mind that they would actually have the technology to have something know when it was time to destroy itself. You know, I don't know how, I don't get how it worked, but it was fascinating, you know?
I think it had to do with a code on the disc, right? And then just that code would, once your player read it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you had, I want to say it was you had 24 hours from the time that you first viewed it to keep viewing it, and then it would go away.
Exactly.
And so the first time you put it in there, it'd put the code in memory in your player, and after 24 hours, it would check, and if it still had that same code, it wouldn't play it. So it didn't so much destroy it; it through software locked you out.
Well, and then of course, I mean, if you know all that, you must have heard also another thing I saw on this guy's show. He the earliest pay-per-view, okay, the earliest form of pay-per-view goes all the way back to the early '60s. Okay.
Oh wow!
And what they did was they had a unit like a cable box that you would put on top of your television. But again, we're talking about the early '60s. Okay.
Right.
And you would have this literally a piece of cardboard that looked like a time clock at work. Right. Your punch card, and you would put it in the machine, the device that's set on top of your TV, and according to what you had punched out, which was kind of an honor system. You would pay for it at the end of the month when you went to pay for this box, the rental. You would pay for whatever it was you chose to watch, and I think one of the first things they ever did on there was show The King and I, an actual stage production from somewhere. But it was actually punched on your card, and you sent your card in with your payment. And I was like, wow. I mean, this technology, of course, became obsolete right away.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was using like an early version of the IBM punch card data storage, because the earliest types of data storage were that were long term and non-volatile were paper tape or a series of cards, that had holes in them. They'd pass between like where two sets of electrodes would be, and whenever the holes were there, it'd block some of them and it'd read that bit and just keep going. Yeah,
that is wild, because I still remember those cards coming with the utility bill back in the early '70s. It would be with the electric bill. That was how they sent you the receipt, to show you this is what you used.
And it was the paperwork. The paperwork used those cards to physically route them through a giant network of machines to drop the cards into envelopes.
God damn.
Yeah, no, like an electromagnetic version of a fucking pneumatic tube system to sort the cards. Now, you want to get into some nightmare territory. Jose Delgado claimed and seemed to be able to demonstrate being able to radio control animals using series of IBM cards for instructions.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Going back to like the Leonard Kyle, he's the guy who really pioneered that Leonard Kyle tech. And we're gonna that's gonna have to be its own show. And I started getting clippings last night because I got a free trial on newspapers.com, so I can search 650 newspapers. And I found a ton of clippings on him just specifically from the papers. And plus, I've done research on this guy for over a decade.
Yeah. Right.
So when I do that show, I want it to be at least as good as that Leonard Kyle show with all the dates. Timeline, everything. Yeah. Like that to me, that one's really, really important. Because that's that guy, like Mengele, died a natural death without seeing justice. And that's terrible to me. But this is a guy who in 1974 got before Congress, and it's on the congressional record, and said man does not have a right to the development of his own mind, and all people from the top down should be electrocerebrally radio controlled. He said that to our Congress, and then almost immediately after flew to Spain under Franco to start working for him until he moved back to California later.
So why was he speaking to Congress?
Because he was the foremost authority in the world on what they refer to as psychosurgery.
Yeah.
Wow. So that goes back to that Terminal Man stuff, huh?
Yeah, he had there's a video that I've got it's him in front of a bull that he's implanted electrodes in and a radio receiver, and it's him out in front of the bull, and he waves the matador flag, the bull runs at him, and he presses a button, and the bull just turns away. Does it every time.
Wow. Now, see, I've never heard anything about this. This is phenomenal, man.
Yeah, like Jose Delgado is a nightmare to me. This is the type, like, you know what fucked me up as a kid? The movie The Secret of Nim.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I remember that Jim Henson makeup or effects.
You should watch that movie again. Like The Secret of Nim. Like, what is NIM? It's the National Institute of Mental Health. Read the book sometime.
Ooh.
Did not know this. Wow. I never bothered because I'd never really seen it because I just wasn't a big fan back when David Bowie played a wizard and did a song in a movie.
Well, this is
What? You don't like Labyrinth?
but this was a cartoon. It's not a production like that. It's not Muppets and Rockstars, man. This is a cartoon. Like, I would say maybe if you were gonna compare it to something like that, The Dark Crystal's a better comparison. But this is not that. This is like more like Watership Down.
Yeah, but what's wrong with Labyrinth?
I'm sorry. I was thinking you were talking about the one I'm thinking of with like some Muppets and one looked like a
This
clown.
is Secret of Nim is about a mouse. Basically, it's an animated mouse who's trying to save her son, but she ends up having to deal with like some rats that were subject of fucking brain studies.
Wow.
It's amazing that this was marketed to children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Like I urge anyone who hasn't seen it or who hasn't seen it in a long time, go back and rewatch it with new eyes.
It's such a weird connection.
That also something that kind of freaks me out as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I heard of it back then, but not as much as I heard later on in life. But whenever you're talking about manipulating somebody's mind, as far as electroshock and as far as the lobotomies and things.
Yeah.
Because I saw a movie about this old actress named Frances Farmer, and she apparently had a lot of mental health problems, and from what I heard, she got a lot of that electric shock therapy, and some of that looks barbaric.
It was absolutely barbaric. It's stuff like that led to what we call informed consent laws, because like it's not just that you deserve to know; it's that without those laws, the medical establishment all throughout history apparently has no problems allowing the sociopaths within it to do whatever the fuck they want. It's like that whole thin blue line bullshit, but for doctors.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I've seen them, in movies and things. They put people in ice cold water, and
my father has had to hold people while they got electroshock. Right. My father's 6'3". Most of my life, he was closer to 300 pounds than not. He worked as an ER nurse and ambulance driver in Columbus, Mississippi for the vast majority of 40 years.
Wow.
And a lot of that was during like the 70s and 80s. And they were still using that type of barbaric ECT at that point.
That's crazy. I mean, then you like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in the ending of the movie.
And look, I'm not going to say there's no place for ECT, right? Like, apparently done appropriately in relatively light amounts for a very tiny fraction of patients who don't really have any other treatment option, it can have positive effect. Like, and we should admit that. Like, whenever we talk about these terrible things, which are the things of my nightmares, like, this is the type of shit that keeps me from sleeping. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. Oh God, lobotomy. Frances Farmer, Nirvana wrote a song I want to say about her. Called, Frances Farmer will have her revenge on Seattle or wherever.
Something like that.
But yeah, I was reading about the history of lobotomy the other day, and I just broke down crying because there's an instance of them lobotomizing children as young as 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Mike. And it really does.
I just started crying. Like I'm trying not to now, because like the hubris isn't a strong enough word to think you understand the mind well enough to fix people by swizzling around an ice pick in their brain.
Well, it's this era that spurred all of the to this day what Scientologists say about the psychiatric industry.
Like, I don't like the Scientologists, but
I agree with them.
don't go get hooked by the Scientologists. But their research into psychology is based in fact.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not anti-psychology either. I'm just trying to be historically informed.
While modern Scientology doesn't take into the account of like growth or change in that industry when it was conceived, that's very much what was going on.
Yeah.
And very much why Hubbard himself, being a nut, did not want to pursue any psychiatric help. He's like, they're going to try to, and his potential conspiracy connections.
Danny just says, people weren't awake yet then, you guys. They didn't even show us all the Zapruder video till at 78. And that's true. Dude, the Time bought it and wouldn't allow it to be shown.
That's
crazy.
And like they would not license it out, and also there were like by 78 there's 7 different versions of the Zapruder film in different cuts, and nobody knows which is actually the original one.
Right.
They'll tell you they do, but if you go back and trace like how it changed hands, etc., there's too many opportunities for people to have made copies and cuts, and there's not enough consistency between all of them to say which was the original cut, as insane as that sounds, because they're all cut.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I mean, that story about how some people showed up at midnight to the film lab where it was, and some government people and took it with them.
Well, why do you think they keep not declassifying files every time it comes up? What the fuck could still be in there that could implicate who? That's literally a matter of national security. They have to keep redacting it.
Yeah.
This many years out. We're almost a century out, guys.
Yeah.
Like we're edging up on it.
Well, didn't they say they weren't going to release some things until the very last Kennedy was no longer here?
I've heard that, but I've never seen that. Right? I've never seen that verified. I've heard it, but I've never seen it. And that makes no sense because there's always going to be Kennedys nominally. People can say, well, that's my great-grandpa I never met.
Right.
So yeah. No, like I think it's more that there are people still operating that would be implicated that are still operating on both sides of American politics, or their proteges are.
Kennedy's fuck too much to ever be a bloodline that's not here.
Yeah.
Every Kennedy, I mean,
exactly.
they fuck too much. It's not happening. They fuck too much.
Well, a funny thing about you talking about Elron, that he was literally, and I have fact on this. Okay, he was literally a frustrated science fiction author who really wasn't very successful, and his literary agent, was a guy who handled a lot of people you've heard of in the literary world. Okay, and this guy's name was Forrest Ackerman.
Yeah.
And he's the guy who created Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine.
Yep.
And he started out just being the biggest collector in Hollywood of actual props and things from old movies, particularly, the Universal horror movies, things like that. And he knew all those guys before they passed away. He was at, the original Things to Come movie when it premiered back in like 1920 something. And he was the first one. And as a matter of fact, they say he coined the term sci-fi.
Right.
Okay. And because he was going down the street, and he tells the stories. Huh?
I don't ever trust like when things are summed up as just this, and the reason why is the specifically within the context of things that I'm looking into, that's how they hide stuff. I personally, and it's important like to understand my perspective on this if you're trying to understand how I analyze like Scientology and Hubbard, I don't believe that his military records are accurate. I'm pretty sure he was sheep dipped, and he's designed to not have credibility based on what he's doing, because you can't be generally credible to become a cult messiah. You have to have secret knowledge. Go ahead.
Maybe that was the case. But the funny thing that jumped out at me, because I was watching a disc I bought, it was a documentary about Forrest J. Ackerman, because like I said, he was the foremost collector, and sadly he died, and most of the stuff got auctioned off anyway. Yeah. But he had a mansion up in the Hollywood Hills that was just filled with all this stuff, like the original Dracula ring that belonged to Lugosi, one of his capes, and pictures of him with everybody that's anybody, Lon Chaney Jr., Boris Karloff. So anyway, while he was doing his literary job, and being a manager for these, these writers, one of them was L. Ron Hubbard. And he said he had lunch with him often, and he would always be talking about how he's going to start a religion.
Yeah.
He's going to start a religion. Okay, now this is in the early, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, I'm going to start a religion. And he said, I'll be damned if he didn't turn around and Scientology became something, right?
Absolutely.
So it just occurs to me that,
well, he was already involved during that time period. He was already involved in cults, right? He was right there with Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist, and involved in the OTO. Yeah. So he was already in alternative religions. So no surprise that his plan was to create his own, or really co-opt people into his own, which is the classic strategy when you create a new cult: is you steal half of an old cult, because that it's made out of people who are willing to be cultists. Yeah.
Well, he rubbed elbows with Anton LaVey as well.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
To me, that totally tracks, because LaVey, I believe, was, if not an operative, a useful asset.
Well, what finally pissed him off with LaVey was that L. Ron was supposed to have sold LaVey's girlfriend at the time.
Oh, no, that was Jack Parsons. That was Jack Parsons, though he did rub... I believe. I'll have to look into it. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
No, it was Jack Parsons. He stole Jack Parsons' girlfriend and boat.
And then they just waited out in the harbor and stared at Parsons on the pier.
Yeah, just looked at him. Just
but yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right that he did rub elbows with LaVey. 100%. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah. Well, look, they were in the same fucking town multiple times.
Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing about him. He was an astoundingly good hypnotist. Yeah. There was a writer's circle that had all of the sci-fi writers of the day.
Right.
And he goes to demonstrate it on one of them, right? And he puts the guy in a deep trance, then he makes him think he's on fire. Right? And then he puts him out. And I've seen this sort of done. It's normally done where they tell you to hide they make you think you're holding a gem on a stage performance. They tell you to hide it, and then most people stick it in their pants or whatever, and he says, "Oh, that gem's a hot coal." I saw a performance once where a girl swallowed it, and when he did that, she threw up, man.
Good Lord.
But so they all say, they see that, and then they're like, wait. And then he says, okay, you don't remember this, right? Guy comes out of hypnosis. He's got classic hypnotic amnesia because of the post-hypnotic suggestion. Because who the fuck wants to remember being on fire?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then everybody's like, wait, how many of us has he done that to? And they fucking kicked him right out of the group.
Could you imagine having a homie you don't know if they fucking hypnotized you to feel like you're on fire and then made you forget?
Didn't Parsons make the Gollum baby? They made a movie about it. I think it was called Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, he tried. He's trying.
Oh, Danny.
Which, that's a weird movie with more cult ties. Again, you have these weird small offshoot cults, like the Holy Hell guy.
Dude, yeah, we could do a whole fucking thing, a whole series on Rosemary's Baby's connections to shit.
Yeah, just different. There's so many different cults that were involved in that scene around.
And LaVey. Speaking of LaVey, he was a technical advisor, and fucking Aquino does the same trick, which I think has to do with magical emulation of the thing that you're trying to subsume.
Yeah.
Right? This is why I think a lot of times genres are started by bands that then are hidden, like Coven basically starting heavy metal and then them banning the record.
Yeah.
It's got everything there. It's like the original little voodoo doll that you emulate based on what you saw from its success.
Yeah. Hey, I like what Genesis P. Orange said about Anton LaVey's keyboard playing. Genesis P. Orange said that
it was terrible.
That they would hang out there all the time. They would hang out there quite a bit.
Yeah, and he said that Anton LaVey's house smelled like cat piss.
Like cat piss.
Because he had all these cats. And that he was great to hang out with, but then toward the end of the night, he would always go on about how the thing after industrial music was going to be bombastic music. And he'd go and get his keyboards, like organs and such, and make him sit around for 4 hours while he played bombastic music. And Genesis is like, oh man, I mean, for 30 minutes it's tolerable, but
4 hours.
funny enough, we're talking about LaVey and all that, and all those guys that rubbed elbows with the guy was talking about Forrest Ackerman.
Yeah.
But one of the funny things about him, and I own a full run of the magazine. Okay, it started in 1954 and went all the way to 1982 before it went out of business. So Famous Monsters of Filmland, and it pretty much was just it was aimed at a younger audience, because even though it was all about it was full of pictures from the old 30s movies and 60s whatever, and in the back pages they would have all the ads for like the monster models like I do now and stuff like that, and most of the photographs were captioned with these stupid puns by Forrest Ackerman. So he just came off as like, as a matter of fact, his nickname is Uncle Forey. And everybody involved in the motion picture business, like Rick Baker and everybody like that, all know Uncle Forey, right? Because they've all been by his house and done the tour, because he would give, free tours. If you called up and made an appointment, he'd take 4 or 5 people at a time through his house and show them all his collectibles and everything.
Right.
Really cool. So, but on the side, nobody's perfect, okay? So his big thing, his hobby, and he had a wife as well, and their big hobby was they were very much nudists, okay?
Right.
And there's never been any kind of speculation or any controversy about him and kids or anything like that, okay? But it was a little strange that in 1970, okay, the Warren Publications, who made Famous Monsters, did a one-shot book, okay, like a soft cover trade paperback, that was all about one girl who, I never knew this until like a couple years ago, and I've seen it in all the issues of Famous Monsters. They advertise this book, but the girl's name was Heidi Shaha, okay, and she was, it turns out, only about 15 years old, okay, but she was like built like a model, okay,
right.
And was pretty enough to be a model, and she showed up at the first horror conventions that Forrest Ackerman actually got started, okay, before even Star Trek conventions. They would have these other ones, and she would turn up wearing the Vampirella costume, which if you've seen the Vampirella costume,
very, very well. Very well aware of that,
it's 2 strips of material in a V shape, and that's all you got covering you, right? And a collar. So she's wearing these outrageous, she's doing the earliest form of cosplay,
right?
Okay, and she's popular with everybody. And apparently her father was, I don't remember his first name, but his name is Shaha, and he was a writer of some sort, okay? And he encouraged her to do the cosplay and to get into the movies and everything, and was parading around with Ackerman and her father and all these other like lecherous old dudes, right? Including
there was a whole culture at one point. Look, I hesitate to get into it on this show. In the 70s and prior, there was a whole culture of what amounted to cryptopedophilia. You see it expressed now through history. You can see like the Tracy Lords case, I suppose, would be the most expressive case. But look at Thora Birch. You remember Thora Birch? Yeah. Thora Birch's career went nowhere because her father and mother were both in porn. Yeah. Not because they were in porn, but because they immediately made her into a child actress, basically a product, and her father managed her in a way that makes Britney Spears' dad seem gentle. Yeah. Like he would regularly fight with people on set. So she became unemployable. But this mindset toward children in the entertainment industry was very normalized during that time period.
Well, that's funny because somebody wrote an editorial. It didn't get into Famous Monsters, of course, because Forrest would probably be like, "That's preposterous," right? But somebody wrote a firsthand account of seeing this girl, Heidi, okay, dragged in a back room at a hotel by her mother. Right. And, basically catching shit and then coming out and parading around some more on a catwalk and winning all the costume awards, right? Because, you got this voluptuous little 15-year-old dressed up like Vampirella.
Dude, it's a dark horror, literally, version of what they were co-opting from the child beauty show culture.
Yeah.
Which is designed to make a bunch of money off your kid. because they happen to be pretty.
They were actually selling for $4.99, which nowadays would be like $19.95. But $4.99, you'd get this 100-page book just called Heidi, right? And it was in the back of Famous Monsters, and they eventually pulled it. Okay,
Yeah.
And it didn't last too long because I think enough people started going, "Hey, this seems a little weird."
Well, no,
okay?
like at the same time, you're starting to also like pornography's becoming quasi-legal around the nation in a way that something as relatively tasteful for its day as Playboy wasn't a thing. We're talking like Hustler and Jugs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those
Gotcha.
those networks were tied to the mafia. Every one of them goes back to the mafia. It's not hard to track them back, right? Yeah. And generally with human trafficking. And I mean, human traffickers rarely make a distinction between on age.
Well, dude, let's go back to the earliest example where the mob, which usually they're involved in everything, and I hope we're not getting into some trouble and going to get our faces rearranged for things. Okay, but the mob goes back to the beginning of comic books. Okay, whereas these really unsavory characters, and I had just read this in the last few years in a book called The 10-Cent Nightmare. Okay, because all the comics were 10 cents. And it was about the history of a guy named Stanley Donenfeld. And Stanley Donenfeld was big time connected to some local mobs in New York. And publishing was one of their ways of laundering their money.
Yeah.
And so they said, we're doing these comics. And what they did for the first comic books, like Prince Valiant, Dick Tracy, they just took a bunch of the Sunday strips and put it between some covers, and they called it a comic book, right? Then eventually it became what we know, which is, all original material and stuff like that, okay? But usually it was just comic strips. And they did this because they also explained how Marvel and DC, even though they're supposed to be rivals, basically, theoretically, they worked together because they had the same publisher, the same distribution company. So there wasn't really as much room between them as they'd like to
It's
to
like
let you think.
fake rap beefs now.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
It's like fake. It's like a fake rap beef, right? It's designed so that both groups make money, and they both know they're making money because their fans hate each other's fans.
Well, it was like they would say that, the publishers of both magazines, okay, can't remember their names at the time, but it was Goodwin. Bob Goodwin, I think, was his name for Marvel, and I can't remember. Carmine Infantino, I think, was the guy for DC.
Yep.
And they would go play golf together.
Yeah.
And one would have the Justice League, and the other one would say, "Hey, we need to get a team of people together too." When he got back to work, right? Yep. And they would also. But if you go forward about 45 years, you get to the 70s when they did the big Treasury edition of Spider-Man versus Superman. Okay, and both publishers, and they came together a few times and did these big Treasury editions.
Oh yeah,
but it's just funny.
Hey, they did that crossover in the early '90s. Like this is to me like you could view the comics industry, the big two in the comics industry in America, as being no different than the big two in the political industry in America. Like they know they're working together.
Yeah,
it's a big show.
Well, I love all the old comics, of course, DC, Marvel, whatever, but nothing gets to me. I have such a love for the old EC horror comics from the 50s.
Same that, and I collect those, and I collect old war comics, like Charlton. Like I don't collect Marvel. I've got some Marvel and DC. They're not a thing I normally go for unless I'm specifically looking for something almost like research. And I don't have a problem with them. It's just nobody else seems to be collecting these other comics that are pretty cool, and it's what I got hooked on, So it's like old cultural artifacts like that, or especially stuff related to independent comics flourish in the 80s. So I'm a big collector of like first comics, Like everybody goes on about Judge Dredd, and I love Judge Dredd and all the AD 2000 stuff. But American Flag, Please, it's amazing. Harold Chaykin's an amazing writer and always was.
Right. Well, what I liked about EC, I've got a disc about this too. It just blew my mind that their original title was their name was educational comics.
Yeah.
And they did like Bible stories and funny animals, as they call them, like your Bugs Bunny type stuff. And it was when the father, William Gaines Sr., died in a boating accident, some kind of freak accident. So he dies, and his son has to take over the family business, which hadn't been doing very well at all.
Right.
And he was thinking about just shutting it down when he decided, you know what, I'll do it my way. Fuck it, let's try this. He brought in some people, and they came up with the Tales from the Crypt. And
going forward, William F. Gaines was not just a huge influence on me because Mad Magazine and Mad Back issues basically raised me in the 80s. But but William F. Gaines Jr. going before the Senate and testifying.
That's what I was going to get to.
Like basically getting us free speech in many ways, solidifying our right to free speech. I cannot be more and like anybody, you dig in his past, you're going to find some things that are fucked up. He ripped off some artists early in, but it was industry standard practice. It just was. Yeah. Right? But he also got us free speech.
Yeah.
One of his artists was named Jack Davis, who also did a lot of successful movie poster art, and it really was great at caricatures. Okay.
Right.
So anyway, he was one of the few left when they made this documentary. There was one of the few guys left. Even Frank Frazetta drew for EC for a while,
Yeah.
And so he tells the story of when they had to go for that, subcommittee thing, that Bill Gaines had taken handfuls of speed, in order to be, fresh and be able to respond and be on his toes. And trouble was, they ended up pushing it so far later that by the time he got his chance, he was already coming down, right? He was starting to crash. So he goes out there, and I mean, you can watch it on YouTube, and they put up this giant reproduction of one of the covers, and it's the guy holding the severed head of his wife, and he's holding an axe, and you see her body on the floor, but he's blocking you seeing the stump and everything. You just see the body, you can figure out what's going on. And they said, well, Mr. Gaines, you don't find this in bad taste? And he goes, no, I don't. And they said, well, what would you consider bad taste? And he goes, well, if you showed the blood dripping from the neck of the head, I guess that'd be kind of in bad taste. And, they laughed, and they thought he was trying to be a smart ass, right? So they enforced that comics code. Yeah. And all comics had to, adhere to this. And the funny thing was, one of his best stories that caught a bunch of shit wasn't even a horror story. It was a science fiction story where an astronaut lands on the planet, meets this race of robot people. There's blue robots and there's yellow robots, and they can't stand each other. Okay.
Right.
And they're trying to see if they qualify to become part of like the Starfleet, like Star Trek.
Right.
And they want to become part of this, and so they're denied. Okay, because the astronaut explains to them, we can't do this because you guys can't even get along with each other, and we've managed to get past
and they tried to say it was un-American and socialist, because keep in mind the time period this is happening is during the McCarthy witch hunt era, right? And
but it got even more petty than that. Okay, so the twist ending is the astronaut gets back on his ship. Okay, he pulls off his helmet, and we see that he's a black guy. Okay, and he's got a little perspiration rolling down his face because he's got his helmet on for an hour and a half, and the Comics Code Authority went ape shit.
No, they absolutely did, and it's because here's the reason why. They instituted the Comics Code not just to go after the comic books with kids, but because a whole class of magazines and such were covered by it, including a lot of things that had been printing a lot of political stuff during that era. So it was a broad mass way to clamp down on all of that also had the social goal of getting rid of these comic books. Like, that was hand in hand with it, absolutely. It's important to note that they were astoundingly worried about propaganda and willing to do anything they could to shut it down in their view. Yeah. And in the 50s and 60s, early 60s especially, if it had a racial bent, half the country automatically assumed you meant socialist.
Yeah.
Right? That's just what they assumed, right or wrong.
Well, Mark, in 1955, I think it was, just before they had to start changing it, they actually had a story about a Jewish family that moves into a neighborhood, and they're immediately, because apparently they were catching a lot of hell back then in real life, So this family moves into the neighborhood, and all these other people in the neighborhood are like practically like the Klansmen, and they're going, "Go home, Jew! Go home, Jew!" And the ringleader of this group, okay, who's giving them the most shit, accidentally, while in the middle of fighting with a guy, he kills the Jewish guy, and makes him hit his head or something, and he kills him. And then the mother of this Jewish guy comes out, of the head of the hate group, and explains to her son that she had never told him that he was Jewish because he was adopted. Okay.
Yeah.
And so now he feels like total shit, of course.
Well, Gaines was Jewish. Like his family was Jewish, One thing you would see quite often back in the day, especially in the places that Jewish families would, I say, cluster, where they were relatively welcome, like say in New York and in the printing industry, because the high level of literacy was an association with the mob, and part of the reason was protection. The other part of the reason is once Lucky Luciano was working with Meyer Lansky, like Meyer Lansky was the Jewish mob. Yeah. Like they'd been around the whole time. So yeah, that was gonna be one of the industries they were involved in. And they were mob busting at the same time, even though Hoover didn't want to admit the mob existed.
Yep.
Well, didn't they also have a hand in like early video arcades and things?
Oh yeah.
Anything that makes them up.
Dude, because video arcades were just another form of slot machine, man.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just one that pays out an experience.
Well, and just again, like I can't stress this enough about just Hebrew people. We really stress that literacy and that paying attention to the fucking world and looking at what sells. Like, there's a whole lot of like the sentiment behind some things is like, well, you might think it's amoral, but that's why you're fucking poor.
Do you know who Harold von Braunhut was?
Like, there's a lot of stuff like that with
Harold von Braunhut is the inventor of sea monkeys. There's an excellent documentary called The Dark History of Sea Monkeys. He was a Jewish fellow, right?
Yeah.
He was also an avid Nazi.
Yeah.
He was one of those crazy Jewish Nazis, right?
Yeah.
Like when the Aryan nation, like there's a form of the extendable baton. I've got one of them that the Nazis used, that instead of it being metal, it's a spring, right? So it's like a steel whip. You got me?
Okay.
And in the 80s, he was selling these. Yeah. And he said if you put AB on when you bought it, he'd donate $25 to the Aryan Nation's Defense Fund. Right? The guy who invented sea monkeys and X-ray specs, he has thousands of patents. He was half the stuff that they were selling in the back of comic books.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's like a really weird guy. Like there's other examples of this. Dan Burroughs with the American Nazi Party was like a Jew's Jew, man. He went to Hebrew school, had an IQ of 156.
Yep.
I'm not convinced that what's presented as the Dan Burroughs story is the whole thing, but that's I'm not convinced that it can't be the truth. Don't get me wrong, right? It absolutely could, but I really feel like this guy was working as one of those agents who didn't realize he was an agent.
Yeah.
Really?
That's how the day.
Yeah, because he was with what's his name, Rockwell's American Nazi Party. He was like third in command.
Yeah, you get radicalized, not realize you're fucking.
And it came out that he was Jewish in the paper, and he supposedly shot himself in the chest.
Yeah.
Really? In the chest? That's a weird place to shoot yourself.
Yeah, like nominally the second in command guy gave him a handgun. He goes in a room, puts on some Wagner, and shoots himself in the chest. I don't buy that.
Nope.
Well, did you guys ever hear the anecdote about Henry Ford when he first started the car company, okay, and developing the car? In their main headquarters office, okay, in the reception room, there would be a lot of these almost Klan-like newspapers, okay, that definitely were anti-Semitic, okay, and they would just be laying around on the coffee table.
He never gave back his medal that Hitler gave him.
Right.
Like when everything started coming out and we went to war, he never gave back the medal like most people did. And I'll tell you another thing. I'm guessing you've seen Catch-22?
Oh, sure.
You remember how at the end the M&M companies even got the Germans involved?
Yeah.
I think it works like that.
Wow. you just don't know these things, either you're too young or you don't pay any attention, and then you find these things out much later and you go, wow.
Ford was making money off the German government the whole time because they were utilizing patents he held for making synthetic gasoline. A lot of the engines that were used in Nazi equipment were basically Ford engines that he got patent money off of. And this was wholly above board the entire time during the war.
Oh, there's war profits here.
Yeah, that was totally legal.
Yeah, there's
like he was funding both sides.
Yeah, it's not uncommon in that game.
No, like I don't have good things to say about Henry Ford or Walt Disney.
Yeah, now Walt I had heard about years ago. I mean, there'd been a couple of books on that subject, and forget the frozen head stuff, okay? But just his anti-Semitism and some of his other practices, I think he was also a little bit of a chauvinistic guy too, as far as ladies were concerned, right?
No. I know. I think absolutely, man. I think he's one of those people that he worked with the U.S. government, but he was happy to work with the faction of the U.S. government that didn't mind bringing in all the Nazis either.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like von Braun.
Yeah.
That was definitely something I had learned about early on. I had no idea that basically our space department was pretty much headed by Nazi professors or something.
It was all Nazis. It was von Braun and all the people below him. They recreated what amounted to the same order as their command structure once they founded NASA. Like NASA, Nazi might as well be the same things in many sense. Guys, I love science too. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things NASA's done that I'm real happy with. Let's just know their history.
Yeah.
Well, I told you last time you were talking about it, I really wanted to talk about Doug Trumbull, okay, and the special effects stuff that you did, right?
Right.
The only thing I had to say about that, okay, that I didn't hear you get to, all right, he not only did work on Star Trek the Motion Picture, of which he ended up coming to some kind of blows with one of the head, guys.
Yeah, I heard he got fired off of it.
They gave him so many millions of dollars and said, can you do the special effects? And he was like, sure, we got it. And he went as far as to build a new version of the Enterprise, the refit. And he worked on a little of the V'ger, basically it was a tank with a lot of different paints and inks, entered into it with a light background. So it kind of looked like it was swirling colors and things. Yeah. He did about that much when he said, I'm going to need a few more $1 million or I can't do any more. And they said, no, we've given you too much already. So he left. But before that, okay, back in 1967, he worked with Kubrick on the effects of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yeah. Now, a lot of people think that Stanley Kubrick had something to do with the faking of the moon landing.
Well, here's what I'm going to say about that case that you were talking about just a second, as opposed to the moon landing, before I lose it. Okay.
Okay.
Did you ever see the show The Prisoner?
Oh, sure.
The iconic weather balloon that they use as Rover, the ball,
running from bubbles.
Right? That's the visual everybody remembers, that in the intro, but that's the crazy thing they remember. Those things, I think they got for like 300 of them for £5. They were super cheap. This is after they spent an astounding amount of money on this big robotic contrivance that was supposed to walk around and could go in the water and and they developed nominally a thing that did this thing, right? Like this big walking contrivance robot thing that was supposed to be the rover. And on the first day of filming, it gets broke in the water. It's totally unsalvageable, written off. Or, right, that was a money laundry for the same intelligence services that fucking, what's his name that does the show, whose name is escaping me at this very moment, was associated with. They laundered off some money that they needed. Yeah.
Patrick McGowan.
Patrick McGowan. They laundered off some money that they needed, right, to make it seem normal, and they'd always planned on using the fucking balloons. And since I've never seen any photos of this fucking supposed thing, and I'm a big Prisoner mark, I don't believe it ever existed. I think it's a story.
Damn.
And it's like maybe the mob was on them, maybe the government services, maybe the mob and government services were the same thing. I bet you that's what happened with Star Trek.
Well, I don't want to feed into the paranoia, but I will certainly agree with you on this, because you said the same thing that happened with Star Trek. Okay, Doug Trumbull did some of the effects and then was removed from the project, or departed the project, however you want to look at it, okay? But the funny thing is, going back before he even got involved, okay, they kept on going back and forth, which you can believe this story, okay? It's like he kept going back and forth with, do we want to do it as a TV show? Do we want to do it as a movie? Do we want to do it as a movie of the week? Maybe once a month? And then Star Wars changed everything, which affected a lot of things in the world. And because of Star Trek, they said, hey, you know, what do we got in our possession that we can make millions of dollars off of? And they said, well, Star Trek property. Okay, so they decided to make a film out of it. All right, and meanwhile, they start doing that, and they hire Trumbull and get rid of him or whatever, and bring in ILM. But the funny thing is, they talked about all this money from pre-production that they had done already. I mean, and I've even seen some footage. They went as far as to film a few test shots of people walking around the corridors. Supposedly.
I'll tell you why, and I can't. This is not a real tie, but why I feel like this is probably what happened is because of the tie to Lucy and Desi Arnaz, right? Mitch Warbell, who's the guy who invented the silencer for the Mac-10, to get funded initially in his development of silencers, he went around his neighborhood to people that he knew were rich and anti-gun, and convinced them to invest in a muffler for lawnmowers that would make their life experience better, basically. Right? And he used that money and the techniques that you would use to muffle a lawnmower to crash the company and then create a silencer company. Like, if you go after your enemies and make them fund you so that there's a net loss of funds for them, that causes your operation to work.
Yeah.
Well,
it's how I treat trolls.
In respect to Star Trek, they had done away with millions of dollars, and you know that was nobody ever saw the results of, because they had already paid actors. They had to take some of the actors and give them. And the only thing I really like about it was they turned one guy from being the Vulcan replacement because Nimoy didn't want to come back at that point, and they had to actually go and beg him. Literally beg him, they said, because he was upset about his residuals from the old show. So they worked things out, and then they had to go back to the cast that they had already hired, and they had this other guy, and he already had been told he was going to be a new guy called Ston or something. Yeah. And they had, well, listen, we're not going to use you after all because Nimoy's coming back, but we'll make you somebody. So they ended up making him a commander of a space station, and his name is Commander Branch. So I like that a lot. But you only hear him say it once. But anyway, so they did the movie, okay, and meanwhile they had all these amazing, humongous production costs from these unused things that they had done, and they even used the same sets that they were developing for the TV show.
Look, here's the thing, right? If they didn't have photographs of all of it, and all they have is bank book receipts, then we don't know they actually did it. If they didn't have observers,
I mean, there's actually footage. Okay, on the DVD, there's footage for this thing called Star Trek: The New Voyages. It was going to be called, and they actually shot a couple of test things on a set, and the set was later used in the actual movie when it was finally made. Okay, and then Paramount put it out. But the funny thing is, they declared that they spent millions and millions, almost enough to make another whole movie in stuff that they said they had created for this for this pilot that was never made, right? And you can see where some of it went because it ends up in the motion picture, but there's like a whole $1 billion that they can't account for that we've never seen.
Well, and you know, and we're talking 1970s millions.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like, just go ahead and multiply that number by 5, you know, to get it in real world dollars. Like, it's such an astounding amount of money that if you only needed, right? Like, if you needed to fund 8 or 9 operations and your total budget for funding those was somewhere around $15 million, you could source it out of this through graft.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and we know that they were doing shit like that. I mean, look at Argo. We know they worked with the film industry.
Yeah.
We know the film industry is based on graft.
Yeah.
I love that shit. And there used to be, something I had meant to tell you about a couple weeks ago. There used to be like that show Ray Donovan. You know how he's like a fixer for the studios. You know, he'll have that show on Showtime. Okay, well, on Showtime, there's a show called Ray Donovan. It's probably gone by now, but it was on for years. And I can't remember the dude's name, but anyway, he plays this guy who's kind of a roughneck, comes from Boston, okay, and he gets a job as a fixer for all these studios, okay. So at one point, and it takes place in L.A. So at one point, he's called by this famous football player, right? And the football player calls him and goes, "Ray, you got to help me. I'm in trouble." And he goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "I got this bitch sitting next to me here, and she died, man. She OD'd." And he said, "All right." He said, "I tell you what, get the hell out of there." So he leaves.
So he's like the wolf, right? But like
Yeah.
basically, he's like the wolf from Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy you call when you've got any problem.
Yeah, the fixer.
Check this out. So another guy calls him on his way to take care of this problem. Another young guy who's like up and coming Leonardo DiCaprio type, but he also happens to be gay. Okay, and he calls up Ray and he says, "Ray, somebody caught me getting a blowjob from this dude. What can I do? You gotta help me." And he goes, "I tell you what, be at this hotel in a half an hour." So the guy who's afraid of getting outed shows up at the hotel. The football player's long gone. He puts the guy who's afraid of being outed in bed with the dead chick. So that covers his story. Okay, and that's the way he took care of business. Okay,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was
So he's
curious.
leveraging one operation against the other to solve both, which honestly, like if we're looking for a metaphor, that's the way they think. Like they don't ever try and do anything at one time. You know, we talk about like Operation Midnight Climax, which is when they were using LSD and prostitutes. Yeah, they were researching LSD. The other thing they were researching is the weaponization of
Hang on.
sex.
Oh yeah.
Hold on.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Sorry, guys. Motorcycles.
But what was going on too is the weaponization of sex. Like we were talking about that case earlier with the girl in the back of Famous Monsters. I think there was an entire program starting from the 50s going through at least the 80s where they were using sex and sexuality in any way they could to make money, influence the culture, cause cultural divisions. Like, I got no problem with sex, right? I've got no problem with depictions of the human form at all, right? I just think that they took a lot of these concepts, tied them with other things, and know that sex influences people, and we're both researching it and using it operationally in a real cowboy sense.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the people involved were the mafia.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I mention Ray Donovan at all, okay, is because I was amazed at how closely it kind of ties into, there's a podcast that used to come on called You Must Remember This, okay? And it was a young lady who's written a book on this stuff. She tells stories about old Hollywood, and usually the kind of stories that we're talking about here right now. And the one she told at one point was Joan Crawford.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, before all the mommy dear shit and everything, okay?
Yeah.
But apparently Joan, we're talking about, she was actually in a Lon Chaney Sr. movie, okay, where he played a guy who was a sword thrower and a knife thrower. Anyway, so she was a co-star with him in that movie. But before that even, okay, apparently, if people want to believe this or not, she's supposed to have been known to have made some more adult material, or at least posed for pictures and things, you know?
Oh, same
And
with
she
Marilyn
apparently-
Monroe.
Oh yeah, but I mean that stuff is known because we've seen the photographs and the Playboy and stuff like that. But this was something that, you know, would have destroyed. You know, I mean, imagine you got an actress who at this point is like an Anne Hathaway.
Oh no!
or, you
Well,
know,
apparently, like there was a sex film of Marilyn Monroe that Hefner was able to buy up all known copies of, so that he could make sure that she was still presentable for the magazine.
Oh really?
Yeah.
'Cause I heard there was.
Yeah, from back when she was still Norma Jean.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this thing here with Joan Crawford. The funny thing was, okay, back in the day there was this like magazine. It was called Confidential.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I'm aware of Confidential.
Confidential didn't mind, like, you know, outing people if they wanted to, anything for good gossip, you know. And at one point, before I get to the Joan Crawford, Rock Hudson, you know.
They
awesome.
outed him as gay and basically destroyed his career.
Well, actually, though, maybe they did eventually, but the first time, okay, they wanted to do this. For some reason, they contacted the studio and say, "Here's what we're going to put out there." And the studio was so interested in keeping him, you know, pristine, that they instead, which this is pretty shitty if you ask me, but they said, tell you what, you get rid of that story about Rock, and we'll give you this other guy who's doing pretty well, but he'll never be a Rock Hudson, so you can have him and destroy him.
Right.
And they said deal. Yeah. So instead, you hear about this other guy coming out that you don't know as well as Rock, and Rock is perfectly safe. Okay.
Right.
Well, the same thing happened with the Joan Crawford, and that is supposedly, like, we're talking about way back to like 1920 something. Okay.
Yeah.
She was supposed to have either done a film or a layout. Okay. I think it was more like one of those little penny movie
penny arcade
things.
like film strip that's only like 20 seconds long or whatever.
Yeah, but it basically was her in the buff doing stuff, okay? Whether
Right.
she's blowing somebody or whatever. And so her handlers, okay, or Jack Warner or whoever was in charge was like, we got to get these out of here. We got to do like Hugh Hefner and buy up every copy. Okay, this is about 50 years before Hugh. But anyway, so they went around, and apparently they had a guy whose name is pretty synonymous with being a fixer. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but he apparently took care of all kinds of things like this, okay?
Right.
And one of the things he did was he got all the film or photographic evidence or whatever it was that kept Joan Crawford, out of trouble,
Right.
okay? Well, then, though, it goes a step further, and the same people who helped her out would get her to do whatever they wanted because they said, well, we still got these photographs,
Hey, I'm so sorry. I've got to step away. It's I'm stuck in the city, so I got to go move my car because of the parking laws. I'll be right back, man.
It's actually time to wind down and get ready for the tattered map. So we'll see you guys here in just a bit, actually. John, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, it always is, Mark. It always is, man. I love you guys.
Hey,
You're fantastic.
We love you too.
Hey,
family.
listen, I appreciate you putting out my information yesterday. Really, I do.
Hey, dang straight.
I haven't gotten as many bites as I would like, which is funny because the first person to jump out and give me $100 was my stepfather, who I always thought hated me. That's pretty nice.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's nice. Well, I'm gonna keep it up, and I'm gonna keep reminding people that we have an episode titled "It's Wednesday, My Dudes," and in the description we have the link to John's GoFundMe. In it, you can also see the video for John's GoFundMe. And yeah, drop some donations, guys. If you got it in your heart, if you got it. And yeah,
if you could spare a couple of shekels, man, I could really use it.
dang straight, man. Yeah.
Appreciate it. And thanks in advance.
Hey.
All right, I'll be back for the tattered map, guy.
Hey, we'll see you then, man. Hey,
Yeah.
same with you, Justin and Chief. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.